I can love your children." The words hung in the cooling evening air like a confession, raw, unbidden, impossible to take back. Mara Keene stood on Ethan Harper's farmhouse porch, hands still smelling of dish soap, eyes fixed on the worn boards beneath her feet. She'd just told a man she barely knew the most naked truth she'd ever spoken, that she wasn't whole, wasn't enough, would never be what people expected. But those children, Luke with his silent grief, Sadie with her hungry hope, they'd cracked something open inside her she thought had died years ago. If you want to know how a broken woman became a family's salvation, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The farmhouse stood 3 miles outside Millbrook, Montana, where the highway gave way to gravel and the gravel gave way to dirt. It wasn't the kind of place you ended up by accident. The Harper farm had seen better decades, paint peeling on the barn, fence posts leaning like old men catching their breath, machinery that coughed and sputtered before it cooperated. But the land itself still held promise. Rolling fields of alfalfa, a creek that hadn't run dry in living memory, and mountains rising in the distance like patient witnesses to everything that happened below. Ethan Harper had inherited the place from his father, along with the debt, the stubbornness, and a work ethic that treated sleep like a luxury. At 36, he looked older in certain lights. Lines etched around his eyes from squinting at horizons, calluses on his hands thick as boot leather, shoulders that carried weight even when nothing was on them. His ex-wife, Jennifer, used to say he was married to the land before he ever married her. She'd meant it as an accusation. Turned out she was right. 3 years had passed since Jennifer loaded 2 suitcases into her sedan on a Tuesday morning, kissed the kids with tears running mascara down her cheeks, and drove toward a life that didn't include early mornings, muddy boots, or the particular silence of rural Montana. She called every Sunday at 6 p.m. sharp, talked to Luke and Sadie for exactly 15 minutes, asked careful questions that never dug too deep, and hung up with promises she half kept. Birthday cards arrived late. Christmas presents came from Amazon. She'd moved to Seattle, then Portland, then somewhere Ethan had stopped keeping track of. The divorce papers called it irreconcilable differences. Ethan called it loneliness, though he'd never say it out loud. What remained was the shape of a family with a piece cut out. Luke, 10 years old, had his mother's dark hair and his father's quiet intensity. He'd stopped crying about 6 months after she left, which worried Ethan more than the crying ever had. The boy did his homework without being asked, fed the chickens before breakfast, and carried a sadness so complete it had become part of his posture, shoulders curved inward like he was protecting something fragile. Sadie, 6, was the opposite. Bright, restless, chattering like a bird that had learned human language and couldn't quite master the grammar. She asked questions nobody could answer. Why did Mommy leave? When would she come back? Did she leave because of something Sadie did? Ethan answered with the practiced vagueness of a man trying not to lie to his children. Mommy needed to find herself. Mommy loves you very much. Sometimes grown-ups need different things. The words felt hollow every time, like coins dropped into a well that had no bottom. The kitchen table told the story plainest. 4 chairs, but only 3 ever occupied. The 4th stayed pushed against the wall, piled with mail and newspapers Ethan meant to read and never did. Sadie used to set a place for her mother anyway, fork, knife, folded napkin, until the morning Luke swept it all onto the floor and shouted, "She's not coming!" Neither of them had set that 4th place since. Running a farm and raising 2 kids alone wasn't sustainable, and Ethan knew it. He hired help when he could afford it. Seasonal workers for hay season, teenagers for fence repair, a retired school teacher named Mrs. Kowalski who watched the kids after school until Ethan came in from the fields. But Mrs. Kowalski's arthritis got worse, and the teenagers went back to college, and the seasonal workers followed the harvest south. By late April, Ethan was drowning in the everyday. Breakfast dishes stacked in the sink, laundry breeding in baskets, permission slips forgotten until teachers called, dinners that came from boxes and cans because cooking felt like one task too many. Luke started coming home with notes from his teacher. Seems withdrawn. Not completing assignments. Recommend counseling. Sadie wet the bed 3 nights in a row, sobbing about monsters in her closet that Ethan couldn't see and didn't know how to fight. The house itself seemed to groan under the weight of neglect, dust gathering in corners, windows filmed with grime, a persistent smell of something not quite clean. That's when Nora Bell intervened. Nora was the kind of neighbor who appeared with casseroles when someone died, and opinions when someone struggled. She'd known Ethan since he was in diapers, had attended his wedding with a tight smile that said, "I told you so," before Jennifer proved her right. She showed up one Saturday morning with a container of beef stew and a declaration. "You need help, Ethan Harper, and I know someone who needs work." Ethan stood in his doorway, unshaven, wearing yesterday's shirt, with Sadie wrapped around his leg and Luke watching cartoons at a volume that suggested supervised neglect. "I can't afford—" "Mara Keene doesn't charge city prices," Nora interrupted. 2 days a week. Housekeeping, cooking, whatever needs doing. She's reliable, she's clean, and she minds her own business. You need her more than you know." "Who is she?" Nora's expression shifted. Not quite pity, not quite caution. Someone who knows what it's like when life doesn't go the way it's supposed to. That should have been a warning. Instead, Ethan heard it as permission. Mara Keene arrived the following Wednesday at 8 a.m. in a pickup truck that had seen better decades, its paint oxidized to a dull primer gray, one headlight held in place with duct tape. She climbed out like someone who'd learned not to draw attention. No wasted movement, no unnecessary sound. Mid-30s, Ethan guessed, though something about her made age seem irrelevant. She wore jeans worn soft at the knees, a flannel shirt rolled to her elbows, boots that had done actual work. Her hair was dark and pulled back in a ponytail, so tight it looked like an act of discipline. No makeup, no jewelry except a watch with a leather band. "Mr. Harper." She extended her hand. Her grip was firm, brief, impersonal. "Nora said you needed help with the house." "Ethan," he corrected. "And yeah, I do. 2 days a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays, 8 to 4 with an hour for lunch. $60 a day." She stated it like terms of a contract, not a negotiation. Ethan blinked. He'd paid teenagers more to stack hay. "That's fair," Mara cut in. "I'm not licensed. I'm not bonded. I'm just someone who cleans houses and cooks decent food. You want references? Talk to Nora. You want someone fancier? Call an agency in Billings. You want your house to stop looking like a disaster zone? I can start today." Sadie appeared in the doorway, thumb in her mouth, a habit she'd supposedly outgrown. "Daddy? Who's that?" Mara's expression didn't soften exactly, but something in her eyes changed. "I'm Mara. I'm going to help your dad keep the house clean." "Like a maid?" "Like someone who works hard so other people don't have to live in a mess." Sadie considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. "Okay, can you make grilled cheese, Zeke?" "If you have bread and cheese, I can make grilled cheese." "We have bread and cheese." Sadie announced this like a revelation, then disappeared back inside, already yelling for Luke. Ethan exhaled a breath he hadn't known he was holding. "When can you start?" Mara was already walking toward the house. "Already did." She moved through the Harper farmhouse like water through a dry creek bed, finding the path of least resistance, filling the spaces that needed filling, leaving no trace of struggle. By noon, the dishes were washed and put away, the laundry was folded in neat stacks on the beds, the kitchen counters gleamed. She didn't ask where things went. She observed, deduced, made decisions. When she found the pile of unopened mail, she sorted it, bills in one stack, junk in another, things requiring immediate attention flagged with a sticky note. "You're 3 weeks late on the electric bill," she told Ethan when he came in for lunch. Not accusatory, just factual. "Yeah, I know. I've been meaning to—" "It's on the counter. Envelope's addressed. Just needs a stamp." Plus lunch was grilled cheese, real grilled cheese, buttered and golden, with tomato soup that came from a can but somehow tasted homemade. Sadie ate 2 sandwiches and declared Mara a really good cooker. Luke ate in silence, watching Mara with the suspicious scrutiny of someone expecting disappointment. "You don't have to come back Saturday," Ethan said, testing. "If this isn't what you thought it'd be." Mara looked at him with eyes that were gray-green, the color of sagebrush after rain. "You paying me to make decisions or clean your house?" "Clean the house." "Then I'll be here Saturday." She was, and the Saturday after that, and every Wednesday and Saturday for the next 2 months. The house transformed in increments. Mara didn't perform miracles. She performed relentless, unglamorous labor. She scrubbed grout with a toothbrush. She organized the pantry so cans faced forward and labels aligned. She washed windows until they became invisible. She mended a tear in Sadie's favorite dress with stitches so small they looked machine-made. She didn't redecorate or suggest improvements or comment on Jennifer's absence. She simply made the house function. But it was the small things that lodged in Ethan's awareness like splinters working deeper. The way Mara always made coffee strong enough to taste. The way she folded towels in thirds, the exact way Ethan's mother used to fold them. The way she left a nightlight on in the hallway after she learned Sadie was afraid of the dark. The way she never asked questions about why a 10-year-old boy flinched when women raised their voices. Sadie fell in love immediately and completely. She followed Mara from room to room, chattering about school and friends and the injustice of bedtimes. Mara listened without performing interest. No exaggerated gasps, no fake enthusiasm, just steady attention that made Sadie feel heard. When Sadie asked if Mara had kids, Mara said no, and changed the subject so smoothly Sadie didn't notice the door closing. Luke was harder. He watched Mara the way a wild animal watches a human, acknowledging presence, calculating threat, maintaining distance. When she fixed his favorite lunch without being told what it was, he ate it without comment. When she noticed he couldn't find his math homework and located it under the couch, he muttered, "Thanks," so quietly it barely qualified as sound. When she asked if he wanted to help make cookies, he said no, then stood in the doorway watching until she asked him to measure the flour. "You're good with them," Ethan said one evening after Mara had left and the kids were in bed. He hadn't meant to say it out loud. The next Wednesday, Mara arrived to find Sadie running a fever, 103 degrees, eyes glassy, small body radiating heat. Ethan was panicking in the controlled way of single fathers who can't afford to panic, calling the pediatrician, searching for children's Tylenol, trying to remember if you were supposed to starve a fever or feed it. "Go work," Mara said. "I've got her." "You don't have to." "Hay doesn't wait for sick kids. I've got her." Ethan hesitated. Mara had already lifted Sadie into her arms, was carrying her toward the couch, was speaking in low, soothing tones that made Sadie's whimpering ease. He went to work. What else could he do? When he returned at lunch, Sadie was asleep on the couch, fever broken, a damp washcloth on her forehead. Mara sat in the chair across from her, reading a book she'd pulled from the shelf. Something about Montana history, dry as dust. She looked up when Ethan entered. "Fever broke an hour ago. Got her to drink water and take the medicine. She should sleep for a while." "Thank you." The words felt inadequate. "Really, thank you." Mara closed the book. "She's a sweet kid." "She is. They both are." Ethan sat down, suddenly exhausted. Their mother used to say, "I love this place more than I loved her." Maybe she was right. He didn't know why he said it. Mara didn't invite confidences. She didn't do that sympathetic head tilt thing women did when they wanted you to keep talking. She just sat there, waiting. "I didn't mean to choose the farm over her," Ethan continued, "but I did. Every time she asked me to sell it, move to the city, do something else, I said no. And she left. And I don't blame her." He looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully, her small hand curled under her chin. But they didn't have a choice. Luke and Sadie, they're stuck with me in this place and whatever mess I make of it. Mara stood, gathering her book in her bag. Kids don't need perfect. They need present. She left before Ethan could respond. Spring rolled into summer. The days lengthened, the work intensified, and Mara became a fixture in the Harper household. Not quite family, not quite employee, something in between that nobody had a name for. She learned the rhythms. Luke liked scrambled eggs with too much pepper. Sadie needed her sandwiches cut diagonally, not straight. Ethan took his coffee black and scalding, drank it standing at the window while mentally organizing his day. She learned the silences, too. The way Luke went quiet when other kids talked about their mothers. The way Sadie's laughter sometimes stopped mid-giggle, replaced by a look of confusion, like she'd forgotten something important. The way Ethan stood on the porch some evenings, staring at the mountains, shoulders carrying weight that had nothing to do with physical labor. Mara didn't try to fix these silences. She existed alongside them. In late June, Luke's teacher called. He'd gotten in a fight at school, pushed another boy into a locker after the boy said something about your mom running away because you were annoying. Luke wouldn't apologize. He wouldn't explain. He sat in the principal's office with his arms crossed and his jaw set, looking exactly like his father. Ethan picked him up early, expecting defiance or tears. Instead, Luke said, "I'm not sorry." "I know." He said, "Mom left because of me." "That's not true." "Then why did she leave?" Ethan pulled the truck over on the side of the road, gravel crunching under the tires. He turned to face his son, this boy who was trying so hard to be a man, who'd had to grow up too fast because the adults in his life couldn't keep their shit together. "Your mom left because she was unhappy, not because of you or Sadie or even me. She needed something different than what we had here. And that's on her and me, not on you. You understand?" Luke stared out the window. "I don't want to understand. I want her to come back." "I know, buddy. Me too sometimes." It was the closest Ethan had come to honesty in 3 years. When they got home, Mara was there. She'd stayed late because Sadie had a dance recital practice and someone needed to drive her. She took one look at Luke's face and asked no questions. Instead, she said, "I'm making sloppy joes. You want to help with the fries?" Luke shrugged, which Mara correctly interpreted as yes. They worked in silence, Mara cutting potatoes, Luke arranging them on the baking sheet with mathematical precision. Finally, without looking up, Luke said, "Do you think it's weird we don't have a mom?" Mara's hand stilled for just a moment. "You have a mom. She's just not here." "That's basically the same as not having one." "Maybe." Luke looked up, surprised by the agreement. "You think that's sad?" Mara considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I think lots of families look different, and I think what matters is whether the people who are here show up for you. Your dad shows up, every day. Even when he's tired, even when it's hard, that's not nothing." "What about you?" "What about me?" "Do you show up?" Mara smiled, a small, sad thing that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm here on Wednesdays and Saturdays, that's what I can do." "Why not more days?" "Because I have other jobs, other houses." Luke absorbed this. "Do those houses have kids?" "Some do." "Do you like them better than us?" The question landed with unexpected weight. Mara set down her knife, turned to face Luke fully. "No, I don't like them better." "Good." Luke went back to arranging fries. "Because Sadie really likes you. And she cries sometimes because you're not here every day." Mara's expression did something complicated. Grief and tenderness and fear all crossing her face in the span of a breath. "She told you that?" "No, but I hear her at night sometimes." Before Mara could respond, Sadie burst through the door, still in her tiny dance costume, pink tutu, sparkly leotard, talking at light speed about arabesque and chassé and how Madison fell down but didn't cry. She grabbed Mara's hand and dragged her to the living room to demonstrate, and Luke watched them go with something that almost looked like a smile. Later, after dinner, after the kids were in bed, Ethan found Mara sitting on the porch steps in the gathering dusk. The air smelled of cut grass and approaching rain. He sat down beside her without asking. "Luke told me what he said to you." "About Sadie?" "About all of it." Mara didn't respond. "They're getting attached to you," Ethan said quietly. "I can see it, especially Sadie, and I need to know if that's okay. If you're going to stick around or if this is temporary because—" He trailed off, searching for words. "Because I can handle them getting hurt again. I've done it before, but I'd rather know now than later." Mara stared at the horizon where the sun was bleeding orange and purple across the sky. "I'm reliable. That's what Nora told you, right? I show up. I do the work. I don't cause drama." "That's not what I asked." "I know." She stood, brushing dust from her jeans. "I'll be here Saturday. Same as always." She left before the rain started. July brought heat that made the air shimmer and tempers run short. The fence along the northern pasture needed repair. Posts rotted through, wire sagging, a project Ethan had been postponing for months. He recruited a neighbor to help, a taciturn man named Dale, who spoke mostly in grunts and wielded a post-hole digger like a weapon. They worked through the morning, sweat soaking through their shirts, muscles burning. The work was mindless and exhausting. Exactly what Ethan needed. Dig, set, tamp, move, repeat. Repeat, repeat. He didn't notice the wire had frayed until it snapped. The tension released like a whip, catching Ethan across the palm of his right hand. Pain detonated white hot and immediate. Blood welled up in a line that went from his wrist to his index finger, deep enough that he could see tissue that wasn't supposed to be visible. Dale cursed, grabbed a rag, wrapped it tight. "Hospital," Dale said. "It's fine." "Like hell it's fine. That needs stitches. Maybe more." Ethan looked at the blood soaking through the rag, felt the world tilt slightly left. "Okay, yeah, hospital." Dale drove because Ethan's hand was shaking too badly to hold the wheel. They called ahead, got triaged, waited in an emergency room that smelled of antiseptic and fear. A nurse practitioner cleaned the wound, numbed it, stitched it with the efficient indifference of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. 12 stitches, antibiotics, keep it dry, come back if there's infection. It was after 6 when Dale dropped him back at the farm. Ethan walked into the house expecting chaos, kids unfed, worried, maybe scared. Instead, he found order. Mara stood at the stove, stirring something that smelled like heaven. Sadie sat at the table coloring, humming tunelessly. Luke was setting plates. The kitchen was warm and bright and functioning. Mara looked up, took in the bandage, the pallor of his face. "Dale called, said you'd be late." "I didn't think you'd still be here. Where else would I be?" She turned off the stove. "Sit down before you fall down." Ethan sat. Mara put a plate in front of him. Pot roast, potatoes, carrots cooked until they were soft. Food that required actual effort, actual care. He stared at it. "I can't pay you for overtime," he said stupidly. "I'm not asking you to." "You didn't have to stay." Mara wiped her hands on a towel, not looking at him. "Kids needed dinner. Sadie was worried, so I stayed." Sadie climbed into his lap, careful of his injured hand. "Does it hurt, Daddy?" "A little." "Mara said you were very brave." Ethan looked at Mara, who was suddenly very interested in cleaning an already clean counter. "Did she?" "Uh-huh. And she made your favorite pot roast with the gravy you like." "She did?" "Stop talking and eat," Mara said, her back still turned. "Food's getting cold." So he ate. And it was the best meal he'd had in 3 years. After dinner, after Mara had cleaned up and gathered her things, Ethan walked her to her truck. The evening had cooled to something bearable, crickets singing in the grass. "Thank you," he said, "for staying, for all of it." Mara opened her truck door, paused. "They're good kids, Ethan. They deserve someone showing up for them." "So do you." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw something in her face he'd never seen before. Longing, maybe, or grief, or both. "I should go." She did, but something had shifted, something neither of them had words for yet. The weeks that followed carried a strange tension, like the air before a thunderstorm. Mara still came on Wednesdays and Saturdays, still cleaned and cooked and existed in the spaces between family and stranger. But Ethan found himself watching her more, the way she moved through the house with quiet competence, the way she listened to Sadie's endless stories without impatience, the way she'd started leaving post-it notes for Luke with small encouragements. "Good job on your math test. Thanks for feeding the chickens. Proud of you." She never signed them. Luke kept them in a drawer by his bed. One Saturday in early August, Ethan came in from morning chores to find Mara braiding Sadie's hair at the kitchen table. It was an elaborate thing. French braid, Sadie called it, and Mara's fingers moved with practiced precision. "Where'd you learn to do that?" Ethan asked. "My sister." Mara's voice was careful. "When we were young." It was the first personal detail she'd ever volunteered. Ethan wanted to ask more. Did she still have a sister? Where was her family? But something in Mara's expression closed the door before he could open it. Sadie, oblivious, admired herself in the mirror. "I look like a princess." "You look beautiful," Mara agreed. "Will you do my hair like this for school?" "I'm not here on school days." Sadie's face fell. "Oh, right." Later, when Sadie was outside playing and Luke was at a friend's house, Ethan found Mara in the laundry room, folding towels with the kind of focus that suggested she was thinking about something else entirely. "She asks about you," Ethan said. "On the days you're not here. Asks when you're coming back." Mara's hand stilled. "That's not good." "Why not?" "Because I'm the housekeeper, Ethan, not anything else." "What if they need you to be something else?" "Then they need to stop." The words came out sharper than Mara probably intended. Ethan stepped closer, keeping his voice gentle. "Would that be so terrible? Being more than the housekeeper?" Mara looked up, and her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. "Yes, it would. Because I can't be what they need. I can't—" She stopped, pressed her lips together. "I should finish this." "Mara, please, just let me work." He did. But the conversation echoed in the spaces she left behind. The first week of September brought cooler mornings and the start of school. Luke entered 5th grade with all the enthusiasm of a man walking to his execution. Sadie started 1st grade in a flurry of excitement and new school supplies. Ethan adjusted to the new routine: early mornings, packed lunches, permission slips, homework battles. Mara adjusted too. She started coming earlier on Saturdays to help with the morning chaos, making breakfast while Ethan helped Luke find his homework and convinced Sadie that yes, she had to wear shoes even though princesses don't wear shoes in movies. It was domestic and comfortable and dangerous in ways Ethan was only beginning to understand. One Saturday morning, while Mara was packing lunches and Ethan was tying Sadie's shoes, Sadie said, "Madison's mom volunteers at school on Fridays." "That's nice," Ethan replied, focused on the complex architecture of a 6-year-old's shoelaces. "Will you volunteer, Daddy?" "Daddy has to work, sweetie." "Oh." Sadie thought about this. "What about Mara?" The kitchen went very quiet. "Mara works too," Ethan said carefully. "But she could come on Fridays instead of Saturdays sometimes. Then she could volunteer." Sadie turned to Mara with the absolute certainty of childhood logic. "You could, right? You could come read books to my class." Mara's face did something complicated. "I don't think that's how it works, sweetheart." "Why not?" "Because I'm not. I work for your dad. I'm not family." "But you're here all the time. You make us food and do our laundry and braid my hair. That's what mommies do." The word hung in the air like smoke. Ethan started to intervene, to explain, to redirect. But Mara spoke first, her voice careful and kind and absolutely final. "I'm not your mommy, Sadie. You have a mommy. She just lives far away. But you could be like an extra mommy, a bonus mommy." "No, honey, I can't." Sadie's lower lip trembled. "Why not?" Mara knelt down, eye level with the little girl, and Ethan saw her swallow hard before speaking. "Because that's not something I can be for anyone. I'm sorry." She stood, grabbed her keys, and walked out the back door without another word. Ethan found her sitting in her truck, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. He tapped on the window. She didn't look at him. He opened the door. "Mara, I'm leaving." "It's 9 in the morning. You never leave this early." "I can't do this." "Do what?" She finally looked at him, and her face was wrecked, not crying, but close. "Pretend I can be something I'm not. She wants a mother, Ethan. They both do, even if Luke won't say it. And I can't be that. I won't survive becoming that, and then—" She stopped, shook her head. "I should have known better. This always happens." "What always happens?" "This." She gestured vaguely at the house, at him, at everything. "People needing more than I can give." Ethan crouched beside the truck so they were at eye level. "Nobody's asking you for more than you're already giving." "Sadie just asked me to be her bonus mother." "Sadie's 6. She doesn't understand. She understands exactly what she needs. And I can't be it." Mara's voice cracked. "I can't have children, Ethan. Medically, physically, can't. And I made peace with that years ago, or I thought I did. And then I walk into this house, and there's these kids who need someone, and I let myself pretend I could be that someone, and it was stupid. So stupid." She turned the key. The engine coughed to life. "Don't leave," Ethan said. "I have to." "No, you don't. You could stay and we could talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about." She put the truck in reverse. Tell Sadie I'm sorry." Ethan stepped back. The truck rolled backward, turned, headed down the driveway, trailing dust. He stood there long after she disappeared, hands in his pockets, feeling like he'd just lost something he hadn't known he had. Inside, Sadie was crying. Luke sat beside her on the couch, awkward but trying, one hand patting her shoulder in a mechanical approximation of comfort. "She left because of me," Sadie sobbed. "Because I said the wrong thing." "You didn't say the wrong thing," Ethan said, sitting down and pulling his daughter into his lap. "You just said what you were feeling. That's okay. But she left. Sometimes grown-ups need space when they feel sad." "Is she sad?" "Yeah, baby, I think she is." "Why?" "How did you explain adult grief to a 6-year-old? How did you talk about the specific pain of wanting something you couldn't have, of loving people who reminded you of what you'd lost?" "Because sometimes wanting something you can't have hurts a lot," Ethan said finally. "And Mara wants things she thinks she can't have." Luke, who'd been silent, spoke up. "Like a family." Ethan looked at his son. This too smart, too serious boy who saw more than anyone gave him credit for. "Maybe, yeah. But we could be her family," Sadie said. "If she wanted." "It's more complicated than that, sweetie." "Why?" "Because," Ethan searched for words. "Because people get scared, they get hurt, and they build walls, and sometimes those walls are hard to climb over, even when there's something good on the other side." Luke frowned. "That's stupid." "Maybe, but it's also human." Sadie wiped her nose on her sleeve. "Will she come back?" "I don't know. Can we ask her to?" Ethan thought about Mara's face, the fear and longing and absolute certainty that she couldn't be what they needed. "We can try. But how? How did you convince someone they were enough when they'd spent years being told they weren't?" Mara didn't come back that Saturday, or the next Wednesday. Ethan called twice. Both times it went to voicemail. He thought about driving to her house. Nora had given him the address once, casually, in case of emergency, but something stopped him. Desperation, maybe. The fear of pushing too hard. The house began its slide back into chaos. Dishes piled up. Laundry bread in baskets. Dinner came from drive-thrus and boxes. Sadie asked about Mara every day, and every day Ethan had to say, "Not yet, baby." Luke didn't ask. He just got quieter, shoulders curving inward again, that familiar protective hunch returning. On the second Saturday after Mara left, Sadie appeared at breakfast with a piece of paper covered in crayon and glitter glue. "I made something." It was a card. The front showed a stick figure with brown hair and a smile labeled Mara in unsteady letters. Inside, Sadie had written, "You're the best. I love you. Please come back. Love, Sadie." She'd drawn a purple horse at the bottom. Sadie loved horses. "Can we give it to her?" Sadie asked. Ethan looked at the card, the small, perfect expression of uncomplicated love, and felt his heart crack open. "Yeah, we can give it to her." "Today?" "Today." He got the address from Nora, who asked no questions but gave him a look that said she'd seen this coming from miles away. Mara lived 20 minutes outside Millbrook in a manufactured home at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by scrub grass and sage. The place was tidy but Spartan. No decorations, no flowers, nothing that suggested permanence. Ethan parked. Sadie clutched her card. Luke sat in the back, silent but watchful. "You want to come?" Ethan asked him. Luke shook his head. "You go." So Ethan and Sadie walked to the door together. Ethan knocked. Silence. He knocked again. Movement inside. Footsteps. Hesitation. Then the door opened. Mara stood there in jeans and a t-shirt, hair loose around her shoulders, eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying or not sleeping or both. She looked at Ethan, then at Sadie, and her face did something that might have been breaking. "Hi," Sadie said, small and uncertain. "Hi, sweetheart." "I made you a card." Sadie held it out like an offering. Mara took it with shaking hands, read it again. Her breath hitched. "I'm sorry if I made you sad," Sadie continued. "Daddy said I didn't say the wrong thing, but maybe I did? I just wanted you to know I love you. You don't have to be my bonus mommy if you don't want. You can just be Mara." That's okay too. A sound escaped Mara, half sob, half laugh. She knelt down, eye level with Sadie again. Thank you for this. It's beautiful. Do you like the horse? It's purple because that's my favorite color. I love the horse. Mara touched the glitter with one finger, gentle, like it might disappear. This is the nicest thing anyone's ever given me. Really? Really? Sadie threw her arms around Mara's neck. Mara hesitated for just a moment, then hugged her back, fierce and tight. When Sadie finally pulled away, she said, "Will you come back to our house now?" Mara looked at Ethan over Sadie's head. He saw the question there, the fear, the longing. He saw a woman standing at the edge of something terrifying, trying to decide if it was worth the jump. "Your dad might not want me to," Mara said quietly. "That's bullshit," Ethan replied, then immediately winced. "Sorry, language, but seriously, that's the furthest thing from true." "Daddy said a bad word," Sadie stage whispered. "Daddy did, and he'll put $1 in the swear jar later." Ethan stepped closer, voice soft but steady. "We miss you, Mara. All of us. The house is a disaster, dinners are terrible, and Sadie cries at night because she's worried she drove you away. But more than that," he paused, searching for honesty. "I miss you, not because you clean or cook or keep things running, because you're you, because you make the house feel less empty, because when you're there, things feel possible." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "I can't give you what you need, Ethan." "What do you think we need?" "A whole person. Someone who can be a mother to those kids. Someone who can give you a family." "We already have a family," Ethan said. It's missing a piece. And I think that piece might be you, not because of what you can give us, just because of who you are." "I can't have children." "I know, and I already have children. They already exist. They're in the truck right now. Luke's pretending not to care, and Sadie's going to ask me on the way home if you're coming back, and I want to tell her yes. Not someday, not maybe, yes." Mara looked at the card in her hands, this small, glittery declaration of uncomplicated love. When she looked up, tears were tracking down her cheeks. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Of what?" "That I'll let them down. That I'll fail them the way everyone else has. That they'll realize I'm not enough, and it'll break me." Ethan reached out, took her hand. "You've been showing up for us for months. You've seen us at our worst, chaotic, messy, grieving, and you didn't run. Or you did run, but you're still here, talking to us. That's not someone who fails people. That's someone who's scared. And being scared doesn't make you wrong. It makes you human." "What if I can't do this?" "Then we'll figure it out together, but you won't know unless you try." Mara looked past him to the truck, where Luke was watching through the window with an expression that was trying very hard not to be hopeful. She looked down at Sadie, who was holding her hand and smiling like the world had just become a safer place. She looked at Ethan, and he saw the moment she decided. "Okay," she said. "Okay? I'll come back. I'll try." Sadie shrieked and hugged Mara's legs. Luke got out of the truck and walked over, trying to look casual, failing completely. When he reached them, he said, "You left your recipe for pancakes, the ones with blueberries. I tried to make them, and they turned out weird." Mara smiled through her tears. "That's because you probably didn't fold the batter. You have to fold it, not stir it." "Can you show me?" "Yeah, I can show you." They drove back in separate vehicles, Mara following Ethan's truck, probably giving herself the option to turn around if courage failed her. But she didn't turn around. She followed them all the way home, parked in her usual spot, and walked into the farmhouse like she'd never left. The kitchen was a disaster. Mara looked at it, looked at Ethan, and laughed. A real laugh, bright and surprised. "This is really bad," she said. "Told you we missed you. You're a mess." "Yeah, we are." She tied her hair back, rolled up her sleeves. "Well, let's fix it then." And just like that, the fourth chair at the table stopped being empty. The kitchen became their battlefield and their sanctuary. Mara attacked the chaos with the same quiet efficiency she'd always possessed. But something was different now. She hummed while she worked, soft, tuneless things that Sadie tried to copy. She let Luke help wash dishes, didn't flinch when he dropped a glass and it shattered. She accepted Ethan's clumsy attempts to fold laundry without correcting his technique. You're doing it wrong, she said, watching him struggle with a fitted sheet. I know. Want me to show you? Not particularly. I've made it 36 years folding sheets like a barbarian. I'll probably make it another 36. She smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. Fair enough. By the time the sun set, the house looked almost civilized again. Sadie insisted on setting 4 places at the table, including the chair that had spent 3 years against the wall. Nobody commented. Nobody needed to. Dinner was simple. Spaghetti with meat sauce, garlic bread, salad that Sadie picked through looking for cucumbers. They ate like families did in commercials, the kind Ethan had always thought were exaggerated. Conversation flowed easy. School stories, farm updates, Mara's opinion on whether purple was definitively the best color. She diplomatically said it was in the top 3. Luke actually laughed when Sadie tried to demonstrate her dance recital routine and nearly knocked over the water pitcher. After the kids were in bed, Ethan found Mara on the porch again. She'd claimed that spot as hers over the months, the 3rd step from the top, where she could see the mountains catching the last light. Thank you for coming back, he said, sitting beside her. Thank you for coming to get me. I wasn't sure you'd listen. I wasn't sure I would either. She pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them. I've spent a long time convincing myself I was fine alone, that not having a family meant not getting hurt. And then Sadie handed me that card, and I realized I'd already failed at staying detached. Is that a bad thing? I don't know yet. She looked at him, eyes searching. What happens if I can't do this? If I try and it turns out I'm not cut out for whatever this is? Then we figure it out. But I don't think that's going to happen. You don't know that. You're right, I don't. Ethan stretched his legs out, boots scuffing against the worn wood. But I know you've been showing up for us when you didn't have to. I know my kids love you. I know the house feels like a home when you're in it. That's not nothing, Mara. She was quiet for a long moment, crickets filling the silence. Finally, she said, I was married once. Ethan kept his expression neutral, waited. His name was David. We met in college, got married right after graduation. He wanted kids immediately, like honeymoon immediately. I wanted to wait. Build our careers, have adventures first. We compromised and started trying after 2 years. Her voice went flat, reciting facts. Nothing happened. Months went by, then a year, then 2. We saw specialists, ran tests, found out my uterus is incompatible with pregnancy, scarring from an infection I had as a teenager. The doctors used words like unlikely and near impossible, but what they meant was no. Mara, David said it was fine, that we'd adopt, that it didn't matter, but it did matter. To him and to his family, and to everyone who asked when we were having kids, like it was a moral obligation. And I watched him look at me differently, like I was broken, like I'd failed at the one thing women are supposed to do automatically. She laughed, bitter. He left after 5 years, found someone else 6 months later, someone fertile. They have 3 kids now. Ethan felt anger rising hot in his chest. He's an asshole. Maybe. Or maybe he just wanted something I couldn't give him. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Mara turned to look at him, something vulnerable in her expression. I'm telling you this because you need to understand what you're getting. I can love your kids. I already do, even though it terrifies me. But I can't give you more. I can't be the woman who gives you a baby and completes your family portrait. This is all I've got. Ethan reached over, took her hand. Her fingers were cold despite the warm evening. Mara, I have 2 kids who need stability more than they need siblings. I have a farm that barely breaks even and a life that's chaotic on good days. I'm not looking for someone to give me more complications. I'm looking for someone who wants to be here, who chooses us. That's it. That's the whole list. You might change your mind. I won't. People always do. I'm not David. She looked at their joined hands like she was trying to memorize the sight. No, you're not. They sat there as the stars emerged, neither of them quite ready to name what was happening between them, both of them knowing it already had a name. The next morning arrived with the aggressive cheerfulness of a Montana Sunday, too bright, too early, roosters screaming their opinions about the dawn. Mara showed up at 7 with a bag of groceries and a determination that suggested she'd barely slept. What's all this? Ethan asked, meeting her at the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt that had seen better decades. Pancake ingredients, the real kind, not the box mix you've been poisoning your children with. That box mix is a classic American tradition. So is dysentery. Doesn't make it good. She pushed past him into the kitchen, already unpacking flour, eggs, buttermilk. Luke asked me to teach him. I'm teaching him. Luke appeared in the doorway, hair sticking up in 6 directions. You came back. I said I would. People say a lot of things. Mara stopped unpacking, gave him her full attention. You're right, they do, but when I say something, I mean it. And I said I'd teach you to make pancakes, so that's what we're doing. You in or out? Luke considered this with the gravity of someone evaluating a legally binding contract. In. Good. Wash your hands. We're making blueberry. What followed was less cooking lesson and more controlled chaos. Luke measured ingredients with scientific precision while Mara explained the chemistry of leavening agents. Sadie wandered in, demanding to help, and was assigned the critical task of official blueberry placer. Ethan made coffee and stayed out of the way, watching this small domestic scene unfold with something that felt dangerously close to happiness. You have to fold the batter, Mara explained, demonstrating the motion. Stirring develops the gluten too much, makes them tough. You want them tender. Why does gluten make things tough? Luke asked. It's a protein, forms networks. Think of it like… She paused, searching for an analogy. Like building a fence. If you weave the wire tight, it's strong but rigid. If you leave it loose, it's flexible. Same principle. That's actually really cool. Mara's face did something soft. Yeah, cooking is basically edible science. The first batch came out perfect. Golden brown, fluffy, studded with blueberries that had burst just enough to create purple swirls. Sadie declared them the best pancakes in the entire world and also space, which seemed definitive. Luke ate 4, which was the closest he got to expressing approval. After breakfast, Mara started cleaning up. Ethan grabbed a dish towel, joined her at the sink. You don't have to do that, she said. I know. But if I let you do everything, I'm just creating another job for you. This is supposed to be a partnership, right? Is it? I don't know. What is it? Mara handed him a wet plate. Complicated. Yeah, but complicated doesn't have to mean bad. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that only develops between people who've stopped performing for each other. Outside, Luke and Sadie were chasing the barn cats, their laughter drifting through the open window like music. They're happy, Mara observed quietly. They are. I don't want to mess that up. Ethan dried the plate, set it aside. You won't. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise that even if things get messy, we'll figure it out together. That's what families do. Mara's hand stilled in the soapy water. Is that what we are? A family? I think we're becoming one. If you want to be. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled the plug, watched the water spiral down the drain. Finally, she said, I want to try. Then that's enough. The days that followed developed their own rhythm, not the careful 2-days-a-week schedule they'd maintained before, but something more organic. Mara still had other clients, other houses to clean, but she rearranged her schedule. Came by in the mornings to help with breakfast and getting the kids to school, returned in the afternoons to be there when they got home. Stayed for dinner more often than not. Nobody formally discussed the arrangement. It simply evolved, like water finding its level. Luke started bringing his homework to the kitchen table where Mara worked, asking her to quiz him on vocabulary words or check his math. She was patient in a way that didn't feel performative, genuinely interested in his answers, willing to explain concepts multiple ways until they clicked. Why are you good at everything? Luke asked one afternoon, frustrated with long division. I'm not good at everything. I'm terrible at singing. I can't draw. I once killed a cactus, which is supposedly impossible. But you're good at school stuff. Mara tapped his paper where he'd made an error. I'm good at school stuff because I had to be. My parents couldn't afford college. If I wanted to go, I needed scholarships. So I studied. A lot. Sometimes being good at something just means you needed it badly enough to push through the hard parts. Did you go to college? I did. 2 years. Then my dad got sick and I had to come home and work. She said it matter-of-factly, no bitterness, just facts. Life happens. You adjust. Do you regret it? Sometimes, but regret doesn't change anything. You just do the best you can with what you've got. She pointed to his paper again. Like right now you've got long division. So let's figure it out. Luke bent over his homework with renewed focus, and Mara caught Ethan watching from the doorway. He'd been listening, unnoticed. What? She asked. Nothing. Just, you're good with him. He's a good kid. He is, but that's not why you're good with him. Ethan came into the kitchen, poured himself coffee he didn't really want just to have something to do with his hands. You see him. Really see him. Not the sad kid whose mom left or the quiet one who doesn't cause trouble. You see who he actually is. He's smart, observant. He processes things deeply. Those aren't bad qualities. No, but people treat them like they are. Teachers want him to participate more, be more outgoing. Jennifer used to worry he was depressed. Everyone wants him to be different. Ethan sat down across from them. You just let him be Luke. Mara looked at Luke, who was pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. Being Luke seems pretty okay to me. Luke's ears went red, but he smiled into his homework. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Ethan and Mara ended up on the porch again. It had become their spot, the place where conversations happened that couldn't happen in daylight. I've been thinking about something, Ethan said. That's usually dangerous. Probably, but hear me out. He turned to face her. This arrangement we've got, you coming and going, helping out, being part of things but still maintaining distance, it's working. The kids are happy, the house is functional. I'm not drowning anymore, but it's also temporary, fragile. One schedule conflict or bad day and it all falls apart. Mara's expression closed off slightly. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we should make it more official, not marriage, he added quickly, seeing panic flash across her face. Nothing like that, but maybe you could actually move in, have a room here, a space that's yours. Stop juggling 3 different jobs and just be here. Full time. Ethan, I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but we're already doing this. We're already family in every way that matters. I'm just asking if you want to make it real. Mara stood, walked to the porch railing, gripped it like it might keep her grounded. You're asking me to give up my independence, my safety net, everything I've built to protect myself. I'm asking you to trust us, to believe that this is real and we're not going anywhere. People always go somewhere. Not always. Ethan stood, walked over to stand beside her. My parents were married 43 years, died within 6 months of each other because neither one could figure out how to exist without the other. I know that's not everyone's story. I know you got hurt. But not everyone leaves, Mara. Sometimes people stay. She turned to look at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. What if I'm not enough? What if you wake up one day and realize you want someone who can give you more? I want you, just you, exactly as you are. That's the whole deal. You say that now. I'll say it every day for the rest of my life, if that's what it takes for you to believe it. They stood there in the gathering darkness, the space between them charged with everything they weren't quite saying. Finally, Mara whispered, I'm scared. I know. If I do this and it doesn't work, it'll work. You can't know that. You're right, I can't. But I can know that I'm going to fight like hell to make sure it does. And I think you will too. That's enough to build on. Mara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, a gesture so vulnerable it made Ethan's chest ache. I need time to think about it. Okay? I'm not saying no, I need to process. Take all the time you need. She left shortly after, and Ethan watched her taillights disappear down the driveway, wondering if he'd pushed too hard, asked too much, scared her away again. But the next morning, she showed up at 6:30 with 2 suitcases and a box of books. I called my other clients, she said when Ethan answered the door in his pajamas, coffee-deprived and confused. Told them I couldn't work for them anymore. Gave them referrals. I've got enough saved to cover my rent for another month. Then I'll need to figure something out, but I thought maybe... She trailed off, suddenly uncertain. Is the offer still open? Ethan's brain was still booting up, but his heart understood just fine. Yeah, yes, absolutely. Come in. Which room is mine? There's a spare room upstairs, next to Sadie's. It's kind of small. Small is fine. She grabbed a suitcase, headed inside like she was afraid if she stopped moving, she'd lose her nerve. I'll need to go back to my place and get the rest of my stuff. Not much. Some clothes, kitchen stuff I actually like, a few other things. I'll help you move. You don't have to. Mara, I want to help. Let me help. She set the suitcase down, turned to face him. In the early morning light filtering through the kitchen windows, she looked young and terrified and determined. I'm doing this. Actually doing this. Moving in with a man I've known less than a year and his kids and just trusting this will work out. Is that a statement or a question? Both. Ethan crossed the kitchen, took her hands in his. It's going to work out. You keep saying that. I'll keep saying it until you believe it. That might take a while. I've got time. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Sadie, probably, who approached every morning like a small tornado. She burst into the kitchen, saw Mara, saw the suitcases, and her eyes went wide. Are you staying forever? Sadie asked with the blunt directness of childhood. Mara looked at Ethan, then at Sadie. I'm staying as long as you'll have me. Yes! Sadie launched herself at Mara, arms wrapping around her waist. Luke, Mara's staying forever. Luke appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled, wearing a t-shirt with a dinosaur on it that he'd probably outgrown 2 years ago. He took in the scene, the suitcases, his sister's excitement, Mara's nervous smile, and his face did something complicated. Cool, eh? He said, trying for casual, landing somewhere closer to relieved. Does this mean we get real pancakes more often? Probably, Mara said. Cool, Seth, he said again, and disappeared back upstairs. But not before Ethan caught the smile he was trying to hide. The next week passed in a blur of adjustment. Mara moved the rest of her belongings into the farmhouse. Not much, like she'd said. Some clothes, kitchen equipment that was clearly superior to what Ethan owned, a collection of mystery novels, a quilt her grandmother had made that she spread across the bed in her new room like a claim of territory. The kids adapted faster than the adults. Sadie appointed herself as tour guide, showing Mara every inch of the property like she'd never seen it before. This is where the chickens sleep. This is the tree Luke fell out of and broke his arm. This is where Dad keeps the tractor. This is where I found a really cool rock. Luke helped carry boxes, assigned himself the task of making sure Mara's room had everything she needed, appeared with an old lamp from his room because yours doesn't have enough light for reading. For Ethan and Mara, the adjustment was more delicate. They circled each other like dancers learning new choreography, negotiating space, establishing boundaries, figuring out the unspoken rules of cohabitation. I wake up early, Mara warned the first morning. Like 5 a.m. early. I'm not good at being quiet. I'm usually up by 5:30 anyway. Farm doesn't run itself. I like the house cold at night. I sleep with the windows open even in winter. I'll buy extra blankets. I'm not great at asking for help. I tend to just do things myself. I noticed. I'm working on calling you out on it. She smiled. Fair. They developed routines. Ethan handled morning farm chores while Mara got the kids ready for school. Mara cooked dinner while Ethan supervised homework. They split bedtime duties. Ethan read to Sadie, Mara checked in with Luke. Evening cleanup was a joint effort, accompanied by whatever music Mara felt like playing on the old radio that had sat unused for years. It was domestic and mundane and nothing like Ethan's first marriage, which had been full of grand gestures and dramatic fights and eventual collapse. This was quieter, steadier, built on small acts of showing up rather than big declarations of feeling. But there were complications. Sadie started calling Mara Mom one afternoon, casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Mara's face went pale. She gently corrected, I'm Mara, sweetheart, not Mom. But you do mom things. I do things that moms do, but I'm not your mom. Your mom is Jennifer. Jennifer doesn't live here. You do. Mara knelt down, eye level with the little girl. I know this is confusing, but Jennifer is still your mother, even if she's far away. I'm someone who cares about you very much and wants to take care of you, but that's different than being your mom. Does that make sense? Sadie's lower lip trembled. I don't want it to be different. I want you to be my mom. I know, baby, but we can't always get what we want. Sometimes we get something different that's still good, maybe even better in its own way. Like what? Mara thought about this. Like, I can be someone who's just for you and Luke, not your mom, not your dad's girlfriend, just Mara. Someone who chose you specifically. Is that okay? Sadie considered this with grave seriousness. Can I still hug you like a mom? You can hug me however you want. Okay then. Later, Ethan found Mara sitting on her bed, staring at the wall. You okay? He asked from the doorway. She called me Mom. I heard. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. You handled it well. Did I? Mara looked at him, eyes haunted, because it felt like I was rejecting her, like I was saying she wasn't good enough to be my daughter. Ethan came into the room, sat beside her on the bed. You were setting boundaries. Healthy ones. Jennifer is their mother. Acknowledging that doesn't diminish what you are to them. What am I to them? You're the person who shows up, who makes them feel safe, who loves them without conditions. That's not less than a mother. It's just different. I wanted to say yes, Mara whispered. When she called me Mom, part of me wanted to say yes so badly it hurt. Why didn't you? Because what happens when Jennifer decides she wants to be their mother again? What happens when she comes back and they already have someone else in that role? It'll break them. And I can't be the reason they get broken. Ethan took her hand. Jennifer left 3 years ago. She calls once a week for 15 minutes. She hasn't visited in 18 months. I'm not saying she won't ever come back, but if she does, it won't be to resume being their full-time mother. That ship sailed. You don't know that. I know my ex-wife. I know what she wanted and what this life cost her. She's not coming back, Mara, not to stay. But if she does, then we'll deal with it together. But you don't have to protect everyone from hypothetical futures. You're allowed to be present in this moment, to accept what these kids are offering you. Mara leaned against him, suddenly exhausted. This is harder than I thought it would be. Yeah, but you're doing it anyway. That counts for something. They sat there in comfortable silence until Sadie's voice echoed up the stairs. Mara, I can't find my purple crayon and I need it for my homework. Mara stood, wiped her eyes, called back, Did you check the art box? Yes. Did you actually check or did you look at it and assume? A pause. Then, I'll actually check. Mara looked at Ethan, something like amusement breaking through the emotion. She's just like her father. Assumes she knows where things are without actually looking. Hey, I resent that accurate observation. She laughed, real and unguarded, and went downstairs to help Sadie find the crayon that was absolutely in the art box, exactly where it was supposed to be. October arrived with the kind of cold that warned of winter coming. The mountains wore snow on their peaks like crowns. The mornings required jackets. The evenings required fires in the wood stove that Ethan had been meaning to clean for 3 years. Mara settled into the farmhouse like she'd always been there. She learned which floorboards creaked, which burner on the stove ran hot, which drawer stuck and needed to be jiggled just right. She planted mums in pots on the porch because the place needs some color. She reorganized the pantry again, this time with input from Luke about where things should go. She taught Sadie how to braid her own hair, patiently walking her through it every morning until she could do it herself. She also started joining Ethan for morning coffee on the porch before the kids woke up. 2 people watching the sun rise over the mountains, not talking much, just existing in each other's presence. I've been thinking, Mara said one morning, hands wrapped around her mug. About? About what happens next. With us. With this. She gestured vaguely at the house, the farm, everything. We're living together, raising kids together, building a life together, but we've never actually talked about what we are to each other. Ethan set his coffee down. What do you want us to be? I don't know, that's the problem. She turned to look at him. I care about you, a lot, more than I've cared about anyone in years, but I'm also terrified of putting a label on it because labels come with expectations, and expectations lead to disappointment. Who says? Experience. Your experience with David. Who was an asshole? He wasn't... Mara stopped. Okay, yes, he was an asshole, but he was also just a person who wanted things I couldn't give him. And I'm scared that eventually you'll want things I can't give you too. Ethan shifted to face her fully. Mara, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to actually hear it. I don't want you to be anyone other than who you are. I don't want you to change or try harder or become someone different. You, exactly as you are right now, are enough. More than enough. You're everything. You don't mean that. I do. And I'll keep saying it until you believe it. That might take years. Then I guess we'd better get started. She smiled despite the tears gathering in her eyes. You're relentless. Only about things that matter. Do I matter? You matter more than you know. Mara set her coffee down, wiped her eyes. I want to try. To be more than just the person who lives here. To be whatever this is. Your partner, your person. I don't know what to call it, but I want to try. Then that's what we'll do. We'll try. And we'll figure out the labels later. She leaned against him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and they watched the sun climb higher, painting the world in shades of gold and amber. Inside, they heard the first stirrings of morning, Luke's alarm going off, Sadie's feet hitting the floor, the house waking up to another day. They finished their coffee and went inside to face it together, like partners, like family, like people who'd chosen each other and were choosing each other still. The rhythm they'd established held steady through October and into early November, when Montana's weather turned genuinely hostile. Frost came early, killing the last of the garden vegetables Mara had been nurturing. Snow dusted the higher elevations, a preview of what was coming. The farm work shifted from maintenance to preparation, winterizing equipment, reinforcing the barn, stockpiling feed, and firewood. Ethan worked longer hours, racing against the season. He came in each evening exhausted, muscles aching, hands cracked from cold and labor. Mara started leaving muscle rub on his nightstand, never mentioning it, just quietly addressing needs before they became problems. She also started insisting he actually sit down for dinner instead of eating standing up at the counter like a man who'd forgotten he was allowed to rest. "You're going to burn yourself out," she said one evening, watching him practically fall into his chair. "I'm fine." "You're limping." "Old injury. Acts up when it's cold." "What injury?" Ethan waved a hand dismissively. "Broke my leg in 3 places when I was 22. Bull decided I looked like a good stomping target. Doctor said I'd have arthritis by 40. They weren't wrong." Mara's expression shifted to something between concern and exasperation. "And you're out there working 12-hour days in the cold because the work needs doing. The work will always need doing. That's the nature of a farm. But if you destroy your body doing it, then what? Then I guess I'll have a really clean conscience and a lot of pain. That's not funny." Wasn't trying to be funny, just realistic. Luke looked up from his homework. "Mom used to say the same thing, that you work too hard." The table went quiet. Luke rarely mentioned Jennifer unprompted. When he did, it was usually accompanied by anger or hurt, not this matter-of-fact observation. "She did," Ethan confirmed carefully. "We fought about it a lot. She wanted you to hire more help, or sell some of the land, make it smaller so it was easier to manage." "I know. Why didn't you?" Ethan set down his fork, gave his son the honesty he deserved. "Because I was stubborn. Because this farm has been in our family for 3 generations, and I felt like selling even an acre would be betraying my father and his father before him. Because I thought if I just worked hard enough, I could make it all work. The farm, the marriage, the family. Turns out I was wrong." "Do you regret it?" Luke asked. "Not selling?" "Sometimes, but regret doesn't change anything. It just makes you feel bad about the past while ignoring the present." Mara caught Ethan's eye across the table, a look that said they'd be talking about this later. He gave a small nod. Sadie, oblivious to the undercurrents, piped up. "I'm glad you didn't sell the farm. Where would the chickens live?" "Excellent point," Ethan said, grateful for the redirect. "The chickens would be very upset." "They'd probably move to town and become city chickens," Sadie continued, warming to her theme. "And they'd wear tiny chicken clothes and drink coffee and complain about traffic." Luke snorted. "Chickens don't wear clothes." "City chickens do. They're sophisticated." Even Mara smiled at that, and the tension eased. But later, after the kids were in bed, she found Ethan in the barn, checking on a mare that had been acting off. "You can't keep doing this," she said without preamble. "Doing what?" working yourself into the ground, ignoring pain, pretending you're invincible. I'm not pretending anything. I'm just doing what needs to be done. At what cost? Mara leaned against the stall door, arms crossed. You heard what Luke said. This is exactly what destroyed your marriage to Jennifer. You're repeating the same pattern. Jennifer left because she hated this life. You chose this life. That's different. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, I'm watching you slowly kill yourself for a piece of land, and I'm supposed to what? Just accept it? Smile and pretend it's fine? Ethan turned to face her, frustrated. What do you want me to do, Mara? Sell the farm? Walk away from everything my family built? I want you to find balance. Hire help. Sell the acreage you're not actually using. Stop treating every day like a test you have to pass to prove you're worthy. That's easy to say when it's not your legacy on the line. Legacy? Mara's voice rose slightly. Ethan, your legacy is those 2 kids in the house, not the farm, not the land, them. And if you work yourself to death, what kind of legacy is that? The mare shifted in her stall, disturbed by the raised voices. Ethan forced himself to breathe, to calm down, to actually hear what Mara was saying. You're right, he said finally. I know I'm... Wait, what? You're right. I am repeating patterns. I am working too hard. And I'm doing it because I'm scared that if I stop, if I slow down, I'll have to face the fact that maybe I'm not enough. That maybe I failed Jennifer. I'm failing the kids. I'm failing you. Mara's expression softened. Ethan, I keep thinking if I just work harder, do more, fix everything, then I can prove I'm not the guy whose wife left him because he wasn't enough. But you're right. It's the same thing that drove Jennifer away. And I don't want to drive you away too. She crossed to him, took his hands in hers. I'm not Jennifer. I didn't choose this life because I thought you'd change. I chose it knowing exactly who you are. Stubborn, work-obsessed, terrible at asking for help. But I also chose it because underneath all that, you're a good man who loves his kids and is trying his best. That's enough for me. You're enough for me. But you have to be enough for yourself too. I don't know how to do that. Then we'll figure it out together. But step 1 is hiring some actual help around here. Step 2 is selling the north pasture that you never use anyway. Step 3 is admitting you're human and humans need rest. The north pasture has been in the family since your great-grandfather bought it. I know, you've told me. But your great-grandfather also had 4 sons to help him run this place. You're one person. Let it go. Ethan wanted to argue, to defend, to explain why it wasn't that simple. But standing there in the barn, hands held by a woman who saw through all his defenses and loved him anyway, he felt something inside him ease. Okay, he said. Okay. I'll talk to a realtor about the north pasture, and I'll put out word that I'm hiring help, part-time at first, see how it goes. Mara smiled, squeezed his hands. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'll probably be insufferable about the whole thing. I'm counting on it. They stood there in the warm barn, surrounded by the gentle sounds of animals settling for the night, and Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years, hope that things might actually work out. The next day, Ethan made good on his promise. He contacted a realtor in Billings about listing the north pasture. 40 acres of marginal grazing land that required more work than it returned. He also mentioned to Nora Bell that he was looking for part-time help, knowing she'd spread the word faster than any classified ad. Within 3 days, he had 2 interested parties for the land and 4 applicants for the job. One of the applicants was Dale's nephew, Marcus, a kid just out of high school who wanted to learn farming before deciding on college. Ethan hired him on the spot. Mara, watching this unfold, felt a cautious optimism. Maybe they could make this work. Maybe Ethan could learn to ask for help. Maybe she could actually build a life here without it all crumbling. Then November 15th arrived, and everything changed. It started ordinarily enough. Cold morning, frost on the windows, coffee on the porch. Marcus showed up at 7 to help with feeding. Ethan assigned him the routine tasks while he tackled the fence repair that had been postponed too long. The fence in question ran along the south pastures, separating Harperland from the county road. Several posts had rotted through, wires sagged dangerously, and cattle had been testing the boundary with the kind of persistence that suggested they knew freedom was just one good push away. Ethan worked methodically, pulling old posts, digging new holes, setting replacements. The work was familiar, mindless, exactly what he needed. He'd done this hundreds of times. There was no reason to think today would be different. The wire snapped without warning. Tension that had been building for weeks released like a whip, catching Ethan across the palm of his right hand. Pain exploded white-hot and immediate. Not the dull ache of arthritis or the burn of overworked muscles, but sharp, devastating agony that made his vision tunnel. He looked down. Blood welled from a gash that ran from the base of his thumb to his index finger, deep enough that he could see things that weren't supposed to be visible. Tissue, maybe bone. He didn't know and didn't want to know. The world tilted slightly left. "Boss?" Marcus appeared beside him, face going pale. Oh shit, that's bad." "I'm fine," Ethan said automatically, then nearly passed out when he tried to flex his hand. "You're not fine. That needs stitches. Maybe surgery. We need to get you to the hospital." "I just need hospital. Now. Can you walk?" Ethan managed a nod. Marcus wrapped the hand in a relatively clean shop rag, applied pressure that made Ethan's knees buckle, and half-carried him to the truck. "I'm calling Mara," Marcus said, pulling out his phone. "Don't. She's at the store with Sadie. Don't scare her." "Dude, you're bleeding through the rag. She's gonna be scared either way." Marcus called. Got voicemail. Left a message that managed to be both calm and urgent. "Hey Mara, it's Marcus. Ethan had an accident with the fence. We're heading to County General. He's okay, but he's gonna need stitches. Just wanted you to know." The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of pain and Marcus's nervous chatter. The kid was clearly freaked out, trying to cover it with commentary about weather and sports and literally anything to fill the silence. Ethan appreciated the effort even through the haze. County General's emergency room on a Tuesday morning was blessedly quiet. They triaged him immediately. The sight of blood-soaked cloth wrapped around his hand probably helped. A nurse practitioner named Sarah, who looked all of 16 but moved with the confidence of someone who'd seen worse, took over. "On a scale of 1 to 10, how's your pain?" she asked, unwrapping the makeshift bandage. 7, maybe 8. "It's going to be a 9 when I clean this. You want something for it?" "Yeah." She injected something that took the edge off, then cleaned the wound with antiseptic that made Ethan's entire body tense. Marcus looked away, muttering something about needing air and disappearing into the hallway. "You're lucky," Sarah said, examining the cut. "Missed all the major tendons. Still going to need stitches, though. Probably 12, maybe 15. "Great. Could be worse. Could have been your face." "Silver lining," she smiled. "That's the spirit. I'm going to numb you up and get started. You got someone who can drive you home?" Ethan paused, unsure what to call Mara. Partner? Girlfriend? The woman who lived with him and loved his kids and was probably losing her mind right now? "Yeah, someone's coming." Sarah started numbing the area, and Ethan felt his phone buzzing in his pocket. He pulled it out with his good hand, saw Mara's name, answered. "Hey, what happened?" Her voice was controlled, but he could hear the panic underneath. "Marcus said there was an accident. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, just a cut from the fence wire. They're stitching me up now." "How bad?" "Not bad. 12 stitches, maybe 15. I'll be home in a couple hours." "I'm coming to the hospital." "You don't have to sook." "Ethan, I'm coming to the hospital." "Which one?" "County General, but seriously, I'm fine. Don't leave Sadie." "Sadie's with me." "We're both coming. 20 minutes." She hung up before he could protest further. Sarah looked amused. "Wife?" "It's complicated. They always are." The stitching took 40 minutes. 12 neat sutures, antibiotics, instructions to keep it dry and come back if there was infection. Sarah wrapped it in professional-grade bandaging that made Ethan's hand look like it belonged to someone twice his size. "You're going to have a scar," she warned. "Probably a good story, though." "Yeah, I lost a fight with a fence." "Real impressive." "Hey, at least you'll remember not to trust fences." By the time she finished the paperwork, Mara had arrived. She burst through the emergency room doors with Sadie in tow, looking around wildly until she spotted Ethan sitting on a bed in the corner. "Daddy!" Sadie ran to him, then stopped short when she saw the bandage. "Does it hurt?" "Not anymore. They gave me good medicine." Mara approached more slowly, taking in the blood-stained shirt, the pallor of his face, the sheer size of the bandage. You said it wasn't bad. It's not. 12 stitches, clean cut. I'll be fine. 12 stitches is not fine. She turned to Sarah. How bad is it really? Sarah, to her credit, didn't sugarcoat. He got lucky. Deep laceration, but no tendon damage. Keep it clean, watch for infection. He should heal up in a few weeks. No heavy lifting for at least a week, though. Did you hear that? Mara turned back to Ethan. No heavy lifting. I heard. I'm serious. You're taking it easy. Mara, don't Mara me. You nearly cut your hand off. You're taking it easy. Sadie tugged on Mara's sleeve. Are you going to take care of him? Yes, baby. I'm going to take care of him. Like when I was sick and you made me soup? Exactly like that. Ethan watched this exchange, feeling something warm and complicated settle in his chest. Mara was scared. He could see it in the tension of her shoulders, the way she kept glancing at his bandaged hand like it might start bleeding again. But she was here. She'd dropped everything and shown up. They signed discharge papers and headed home, Marcus following in Ethan's truck. The drive was quiet except for Sadie's running commentary about everything they'd seen at the store before Marcus called. Apparently they'd been debating between two brands of cereal when Mara's phone rang and she'd abandoned the cart right there in the aisle, grabbed Sadie and left. The cart's probably still there, Sadie said. Do you think someone took our stuff? Probably, Mara replied, but she didn't sound like she cared. When they got home, Luke was just getting off the school bus. He took one look at Ethan's hand and went white. What happened? Fence wire. I'm fine. That doesn't look fine. 12 stitches, Sadie announced, and Mara's going to take care of him like she took care of me when I was sick. Luke's eyes went to Mara, questioning. She nodded. Your dad's going to take it easy for a few days. Marcus can handle the farm work. What if Marcus can't handle everything? Then we'll figure it out. But your dad needs to rest and heal. That's more important right now. Luke absorbed this, then surprised everyone by saying, I can help. After school. I know how to feed the animals and collect eggs and stuff. You don't have to, Ethan started. I want to help, Luke interrupted. You're always telling me I'm part of this farm too, so let me be part of it. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Okay? Yeah. Thank you. Luke nodded, satisfied, and headed inside to change out of his school clothes. The rest of the afternoon passed in a strange domesticity. Mara essentially ordered Ethan to the couch, brought him water and pain medication, and forbade him from doing anything more strenuous than changing the channel. Luke and Marcus handled evening chores while Mara cooked dinner, pot roast again, because apparently that was her comfort food for crisis situations. Sadie appointed herself Ethan's nurse, bringing him her stuffed animals to keep him company and reading him stories from her school books with the kind of dramatic flair that suggested a future in theater. The caterpillar was very hungry, she read with great emphasis. He ate one apple, but he was still hungry. Riveting, Ethan said, fighting a smile. You have to pay attention, Daddy. This is important caterpillar business. By the time dinner was ready, Ethan was feeling the effects of the medication, pain dulled to a manageable throb, exhaustion creeping in. He sat at the table because Mara insisted he needed to eat, managed half his plate before the effort became too much. Go lie down, Mara said gently. I'll bring you something later if you get hungry. I should help clean up. Ethan Harper, if you don't get your stubborn ass to bed right now, I'm going to say things in front of your children that will require extensive therapy to unpack. Luke snorted into his water. Sadie giggled. Even Ethan had to smile. Yes, ma'am. He made it upstairs, collapsed into bed, still wearing his jeans, and was asleep before his head fully hit the pillow. When he woke, it was dark outside. The clock on the nightstand read 9:40. He could hear movement downstairs. Mara, probably, doing the evening cleanup he should have helped with. He tried to sit up, found his hand throbbing in protest, and decided horizontal was better. A few minutes later, Mara appeared in the doorway with a plate. You awake? Unfortunately. Brought you some dinner. You barely ate. She set the plate on the nightstand, pot roast reheated, with a roll and green beans. The smell made his stomach wake up and demand attention. Thank you. You're welcome. She sat on the edge of the bed, watched him struggle to sit up one-handed. Need help? I got it. It took him twice as long as it should have, but he managed. Mara handed him the plate without comment, and he ate like a man who'd forgotten food existed. When he finished, she took the empty plate and started to leave. "Stay," Ethan said. She paused. "You need rest." "I know, but stay anyway, just for a minute." Mara set the plate aside, sat back down. In the dim light from the hallway, she looked tired, the kind of tired that came from adrenaline crash and worry. "You scared me today," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." When Marcus called and said you'd had an accident, all I could think was, what if it was worse? What if it was his head or his chest or something that couldn't be fixed with stitches? What if I lost you before I even figured out what we are to each other? Mara, I know it's irrational. Accidents happen. But I've spent so much of my life protecting myself from loss that I forgot how terrifying it is to actually care about someone enough that losing them would destroy you. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. And then I got to the hospital and saw you sitting there, alive and relatively okay, and I wanted to kiss you and kill you at the same time. Ethan reached for her hand with his good one. "For what it's worth, I vote for the kissing option." She laughed despite the tears. "You're impossible." "Yeah, but I'm your impossible." "Am I?" She looked at him, eyes searching. "Yours, I mean. Are we actually doing this, or are we just two people living together and pretending we're not terrified? Can it be both? I'm being serious." "So am I." Ethan squeezed her hand. "I'm terrified. Every day. That I'm not enough, that you'll realize you made a mistake, that something will happen and I'll lose you the way I lost Jennifer. But I'm also more sure of you than I've been of anything in years, so yeah, you're mine. If you want to be." "I want to be," she whispered, "but I'm scared too." "Then we'll be scared together." She leaned down, kissed him softly, tentative, like they were both testing new territory. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "You taste like pot roast." Romantic. The most romantic. She stayed until he fell asleep again, her hand in his, both of them finally admitting what they'd been dancing around for months. The next morning arrived gray and cold, promising snow. Ethan woke to find Mara already up, coffee brewing, the sound of her moving through the house like music. His hand ached, but the sharp pain had dulled to something manageable. He made his way downstairs to find breakfast already in progress. Mara making eggs, Luke setting the table, Sadie arranging napkins with the precision of someone performing surgery. "You're supposed to be resting," Mara said, without looking up. "I rested. All night. I'm fine." "You're injured. There's a difference." "I can still drink coffee and sit at my own table." She turned to face him, spatula in hand, expression stern. "Fine, but you're not doing anything else today. Marcus is handling the farm. Luke's going to help after school. Your only job is to heal." "Mara?" "Don't make me get the sedatives." Luke looked up, interested. "We have sedatives?" "No," Mara said, "but I'll find some if your father doesn't cooperate." Ethan raised his good hand in surrender. Cooperating, sitting, healing, got it. They ate breakfast together, and for the first time since the accident, Ethan let himself actually rest. Let Marcus handle the morning chores. Let Mara take the kids to school. Let himself be taken care of instead of always being the one doing the caring. It felt strange and uncomfortable and absolutely necessary. By that evening, after Marcus had finished up and Luke had helped with feeding, after dinner was eaten and dishes were done, Ethan found himself on the porch again with Mara. The threatened snow had arrived, fat flakes drifting down lazy and beautiful. "First snow of the season," Mara observed. "Yeah, usually comes earlier, but we got lucky this year." "Do you think Luke was serious about wanting to help more with the farm?" "I think so. He's getting older, wants to feel useful. Can't blame him for that. He's a good kid. They both are. You've been good for them." "They've been good for me, too." Mara leaned against the railing, watching the snow. "I never thought I'd have this. A family. People who need me. A place to belong. And now that you do? Now I'm terrified I'll mess it up." "Welcome to parenting," she smiled. "Is that what we're doing? Parenting?" "I think so. In the weirdest, most unconventional way possible. But yeah." They stood there in the falling snow, the farmhouse warm and bright behind them, and Ethan felt something settle into place. This was his life now. Messy and complicated and nothing like he'd planned. But it was real, and it was enough. Inside, Sadie called for Mara, something about needing help with bath time. Mara pushed off the railing, headed for the door, then paused. Ethan? Yeah? I love you. I don't know if I've said that out loud yet, but I do. I love you. Before he could respond, she was gone, disappearing into the house where their children waited. And Ethan stood alone in the snow, hand throbbing, heart full, finally understanding that sometimes the best things in life were the ones you never saw coming. He stood there for a long moment after she'd gone, snowflakes melting on his upturned face, those 3 words echoing in his chest like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. She loved him. Mara Keene, who'd built walls so high she'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone in, had just told him she loved him and then disappeared into the house like it was the most natural thing in the world. Ethan wanted to follow her, to say it back, to make sure she knew he felt the same way. But Sadie was calling for bath time, and Luke probably needed help with homework, and the moment had already passed into the rhythm of ordinary evening chaos. So he stood there a minute longer, letting the snow accumulate on his shoulders, feeling like a man who'd just been handed something precious and fragile and had no idea how not to break it. When he finally went inside, the house was warm with the smell of the wood stove and the sound of running water upstairs. He found Luke at the kitchen table, math homework spread out like a battlefield, pencil tapping against his notebook in a rhythm that suggested frustration. Stuck? Ethan asked, pulling out a chair with his good hand. Fractions. I hate fractions. Join the club. What's the problem? Luke pointed to an equation that looked like it had been designed by someone who genuinely hated children. I don't understand what they're asking. Like, why would you divide a fraction by another fraction? That's not a real thing people do. Cooking, Ethan said. If a recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup, but you only want to make half the recipe, you're dividing fractions. That's what Mara said. Smart woman. She helped me with the first few, but then Sadie needed her and I got stuck again. Luke looked up, and something in his expression was different. Older, maybe, or just more honest. Do you think she's going to stay? Mara? Yeah. Ethan chose his words carefully. I think she wants to stay. Why? Because I don't want to get used to her and then have her leave too. That's what happened with Mom. We got used to her being here and then one day she just wasn't. The casual devastation of that statement hit Ethan square in the chest. Luke, I'm not saying it to make you feel bad. I'm just saying I know people leave, even when they say they won't, even when you think they're happy. So I need to know if Mara's the kind of person who stays or the kind who leaves. Ethan set his injured hand carefully on the table, used his good one to turn Luke's homework so he could see it better. I can't promise you she'll never leave. I can't promise you anything bad won't happen. But I can tell you that Mara is the kind of person who shows up, who does what she says she's going to do, who doesn't make promises she can't keep. And right now she's here. She's choosing to be here. That has to be enough. What if it's not enough for her? What if she wakes up one day and decides we're too much work? Then we'll survive it. Like we survived your mom leaving. It'll hurt like hell, but we'll get through it. Ethan paused. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Mara's in this for real. How do you know? Because she told me she loved me about 5 minutes ago and then ran away before I could say it back. Luke's eyes widened. She said that? She did. What are you going to say? That I love her too? Obviously. When? When the moment's right. Luke made a face. That's the worst answer ever. You should just tell her. When did you become a relationship expert? I'm not, but I watch TV. And on TV, when someone says they love you, you're supposed to say it back immediately, not wait for the right moment. Ethan laughed despite himself. Life's not a TV show, buddy. Maybe it should be. Things would be simpler. From upstairs came Sadie's voice, singing something off-key and enthusiastic about ducks. Mara's lower tones responded, probably trying to convince Sadie that bath time required less performance art and more actual bathing. She's good with Sadie, Luke said, going back to his homework like the emotional conversation hadn't just happened. Better than Mom was, honestly. Luke, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just being honest. Mom loved us, but she didn't really like hanging out with us. Mara actually seems to like it. That's different. He was right. and Ethan knew it. Jennifer had loved her children in the abstract, the idea of them, the social proof they provided, but the actual day-to-day work of parenting had exhausted her. Mara, on the other hand, seemed to thrive in the mundane details. She genuinely enjoyed Sadie's endless questions and Luke's quiet observations. She didn't perform motherhood, she just lived it. "Yeah," Ethan said, "it is different." They worked on fractions together until Luke understood the concept well enough to finish the homework himself. By the time Mara came downstairs with a damp, pajama-clad Sadie, Luke had moved on to reading, and Ethan was just sitting there, watching his son and marveling at how much the kid had grown when he wasn't paying attention. "Bedtime," Mara announced. "Both of you." "I'm not tired," Sadie protested, yawning so wide her jaw cracked. "Clearly, that's why you're yawning." "That was just one yawn, doesn't count." "Uh-huh. Upstairs. Teeth brushed?" "Yep." "Actually brushed or just wet the toothbrush?" Sadie's guilty expression said everything. Mara pointed toward the stairs. "Upstairs. Actually brushed them this time. I'll be up in 5 minutes to check." Sadie trudged upstairs with the wounded dignity of someone unfairly persecuted. Luke followed without being asked, taking his book with him. When they were gone, Mara collapsed into a chair with the exhaustion of someone who'd been running on adrenaline for 2 days. "They're going to kill me," she said to the ceiling. "They're 6 and 10. You've got at least 8 more years before the real torture begins." Teenagers. Right. Something to look forward to. The absolute best. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Ethan recognized that look, the one that said she was thinking too hard, worrying about things that hadn't happened yet. "You okay?" he asked. "I told you I loved you, and then ran away. I'm basically a teenager myself." "I noticed. And now it's awkward, and I don't know how to un-awkward it." Ethan stood, walked over to where she sat, and carefully knelt down so they were eye level. His hand throbbed in protest, but he ignored it. "I love you too," he said. "There. Not awkward anymore." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to say it just because I did." "I'm not. I'm saying it because it's true. I love you, Mara Keene. I love how you fold towels in thirds and leave post-it notes for Luke and make coffee strong enough to strip paint. I love how you showed up here broken and scared and decided to stay anyway. I love that you're sitting here exhausted from taking care of my kids like they're your own. I just love you. I can't give you more children." "I don't want more children. I want you. I'm going to have bad days where I'm convinced I'm failing everyone. So will I. We'll have bad days together. I might wake up terrified and try to run again. Then I'll come after you, again. As many times as it takes." She pulled him up, carefully, mindful of his injury, and kissed him properly this time. Not the tentative kiss from the night before, but something deeper, more certain. When they broke apart, she was smiling through tears. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. "Probably not. I'm a catch. Injured hand, failing farm, 2 kids with abandonment issues. Real prize." She laughed, the sound watery but genuine. "When you put it that way." "See? You're settling. The worst decision I've ever made. Absolutely terrible judgment." They stayed there, forehead to forehead, until Sadie yelled down that she'd brushed her teeth and Mara needed to come verify because she didn't trust her. Mara went upstairs to perform the tooth inspection, and Ethan sat back down at the table, feeling like a man who just cleared some invisible hurdle he hadn't known he was running toward. The next few weeks passed in a blur of adjustment and healing. Ethan's hand slowly improved. Stitches came out. The angry red scar began to fade to pink. Marcus proved himself capable and reliable, taking on more responsibilities as Ethan learned to delegate. The North pasture sold to a neighboring ranch for a fair price, money that would help get through the winter without the constant panic of insolvency. More importantly, the 4 of them settled into something that looked remarkably like a functional family. Mara stopped referring to herself as the housekeeper and started just being present, showing up at school events, helping with homework, sitting through Sadie's dance recitals with the patience of someone who genuinely wanted to be there. Luke started calling her Mara instead of the lady who cooks, and occasionally sought her out for advice before going to Ethan. Sadie stopped asking if Mara was staying and started making plans that assumed her presence. "When we go to the fair next summer, can Mara come?" What about for my birthday? Can Mara help me make cupcakes? The town noticed. Millbrook was small enough that everyone knew everyone else's business, and Ethan Harper getting a live-in girlfriend barely 4 months after she started as his housekeeper was prime gossip material. Most people were kind about it. Nora Bell took credit for the whole thing. The grocery store clerk asked Mara how she was settling in. The school secretary started addressing notes to Mr. Harper and Mrs. Keene like they were a unit. But there were exceptions. Karen Pritchard, whose daughter was in Sadie's class, made a point of asking Mara at pickup one day if she was the new Mrs. Harper or just the help. Mara's smile could have cut glass. Just someone who loves those kids. You have a nice day, Karen. She told Ethan about it that evening while making dinner, her voice carefully neutral in the way that meant she was furious. Karen Pritchard is a busybody with nothing better to do than police other people's lives, Ethan said, chopping vegetables one-handed with the kind of aggressive precision that suggested he was imagining Karen's face. Ignore her. I am ignoring her, but it got me thinking. About? About what we are. To each other. To the kids. To the town. She stopped stirring the pot, turned to face him. We're living together, raising children together, building a life together. But we've never actually defined it, and I'm starting to think maybe we should. What do you want to define it as? I don't know. That's the problem. She resumed stirring more aggressively than necessary. I'm not ready for marriage. The whole institution makes me nervous after what happened with David. But I also don't want people thinking I'm just your live-in girlfriend or the nanny or whatever Karen Pritchard decides to call me this week. So what do you want? Mara was quiet for a long moment. I want to be your partner. Your equal. Someone you choose and who chooses you back. Every day. I want the kids to know I'm not going anywhere. I want the town to mind its own damn business, but also recognize that this is real. Okay. Okay? You're my partner. My equal, the person I choose every day. We'll tell the kids that. We'll tell the town that. And if Karen Pritchard doesn't like it, she can go to hell. You make it sound so simple. Maybe it is simple. Maybe we're the ones making it complicated. She considered this while transferring the soup to bowls. You think the kids will understand that we're together but not married? Kids understand love. They understand commitment. The rest is just paperwork. That night, after dinner, they sat the kids down in the living room for what Ethan mentally termed the talk. Sadie immediately looked worried. Luke looked suspicious, and Mara looked like she wanted to bolt. Nobody's in trouble, Ethan started. We just wanted to talk to you about how things are going, with all of us, as a family. Are you and Mara getting married? Sadie asked immediately. No, not right now, but we wanted you to know that Mara and I are together, like together. And she's not going anywhere. Luke's eyes narrowed. What does together mean? Mara took a breath, dove in. It means your dad and I love each other, and we love both of you. And we've decided to build a life together, all 4 of us. We're a family, even if it doesn't look like other families you know. So, you're boyfriend and girlfriend? Sadie asked. Sort of, but more serious than that. But not married? Not right now, no. Sadie processed this with visible concentration. Madison's parents aren't married. They're domestic partners. She says it's the same thing, but with less cake. Luke snorted. That's actually pretty accurate. So you're domestic partners? Sadie pressed. Ethan looked at Mara, who shrugged. Sure, we're domestic partners. Cool. Can we have cake anyway? Why would we have cake? Because Madison's parents had cake when they became domestic partners, even though they didn't get married. They said you should always have cake for important decisions. Madison's parents sound wise, Mara said, fighting a smile. We'll have cake. Chocolate? Obviously chocolate. Sadie seemed satisfied with this. Luke, predictably, had more questions. What happens if you guys break up? We're not going to break up, Ethan said. But what if you do? Does Mara leave? Do we have to pick sides? Mara leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. Luke, I can't promise that nothing will ever go wrong. Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise that even if your dad and I had problems, I wouldn't just disappear. You and Sadie matter to me. You'd still matter to me no matter what happened between me and your dad. How do I know that's true? Because I'm telling you it's true. And I don't lie to you. I never have. Luke studied her face like he was looking for cracks in her conviction. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. Okay. Okay? I believe you. The tension in Mara's shoulders eased visibly. Thank you. Can I ask one more question? Of course. Are you happy? Like, actually happy? Because Mom said she was happy here, and then she left anyway. So I need to know if you're actually happy or just pretending. The question landed like a physical blow. Mara's eyes went bright with unshed tears, but her voice stayed steady. I'm actually happy, Luke. The happiest I've been in years. This house, this farm, you and Sadie and your dad. This is where I want to be. I'm not pretending. Good. Luke stood, clearly done with emotional vulnerability for the evening. I'm going to go read. He left, and Sadie followed him upstairs, chattering about chocolate cake and domestic partnerships. When they were gone, Mara let out a shaky breath. That was terrifying. You did great. He asked if I was happy. And you told him the truth. Yeah. She wiped her eyes. I did. Thanksgiving arrived cold and clear, the kind of Montana day where the sky went on forever and the air tasted like coming snow. Ethan had planned to keep it simple, turkey, basic sides, just the four of them. But Mara had other ideas. We should invite people, she said a week before. Make it a real thing. It is a real thing. Turkey, stuffing, the whole deal. I mean, we should invite Marcus and Nora. Maybe some of Luke and Sadie's friends from school. That's a lot of people. That's the point. We're a family. Families celebrate together. And both of us have spent too many holidays alone or unhappy. Let's do it right this time. So they invited people. Marcus, who had nowhere else to go. Nora Bell, who'd been eating Thanksgiving alone since her husband died. Luke's friend Ryan and his mom, who were new to town. Sadie's friend Madison, and her domestic partner parents who believed in cake for important occasions. The house filled with noise and laughter and the smell of roasting turkey. Mara directed traffic in the kitchen like a general commanding troops. Sadie and Madison put on an interpretive dance about turkeys that was equal parts creative and chaotic. Luke and Ryan disappeared into the barn to look at the new calves, came back with hay in their hair and matching smiles. Ethan found himself standing in the doorway between the kitchen and living room, watching it all unfold. This messy, loud, imperfect gathering of people who'd somehow become his community. Mara caught his eye from across the room, smiled, mouthed, "You okay?" He nodded, realized he was more than okay. He was grateful. When they finally sat down to eat, the table was so crowded plates barely fit. Ethan cleared his throat, preparing to say grace or give thanks or whatever people did at these gatherings, but Sadie beat him to it. I'm thankful for Mara, she announced, because she makes really good food and she braids my hair and she doesn't leave even when things are hard. Mara's eyes went bright. Thank you, sweetheart, Luke added more quietly. I'm thankful for this year being better than last year. They went around the table. Marcus thankful for the job, Nora thankful for neighbors who cared, Ryan's mom thankful for new beginnings. When it got to Mara, she paused, looked at Ethan and the kids, and said simply, I'm thankful for family, for being chosen and choosing back. Ethan's turn came last. I'm thankful for second chances and for people who are brave enough to take them. They ate until they couldn't move, then ate dessert anyway because Madison's parents had brought 3 pies and Sadie insisted they try all of them. As evening turned to night and guests started leaving, the house slowly quieted back down to just the 4 of them. Luke and Sadie headed upstairs to bed without being asked, both of them exhausted from a day of socializing and pie. Ethan and Mara tackled the mountain of dishes together, working in the comfortable silence of people who'd learned each other's rhythms. That was perfect, Mara said, handing him a dripping plate to dry. It was loud. Perfectly loud. You did good, hosting, managing everything. We did good. Together. He set the dried plate aside, took her wet hand in his dry one. Mara, I need to ask you something. That sounds ominous. It's not. It's just... He paused, trying to find the right words. Are you happy? Actually happy, like you told Luke? Because you've been running yourself ragged, taking care of all of us, and I need to know you're not just going through the motions. She turned off the water, dried her hands, faced him fully. Do you want the polite answer or the honest one? Always honest. I'm exhausted. The kids are more work than I expected. This house is never fully clean. I miss having time to myself. I worry constantly that I'm doing everything wrong. She paused. And I've never been happier in my entire life. Not even close. Yeah. This chaos, this noise, these ridiculous children who ask impossible questions and leave toys everywhere and need me in ways that terrify me. It's everything I thought I couldn't have, everything I thought I didn't deserve. And some days it's overwhelming, but it's real. And it's mine. Ours. So yes, Ethan, I'm happy. Genuinely, terrifyingly happy. He kissed her then, tasting pie and dishwater and promises. When they broke apart, she was smiling. What was that for? For being brave enough to stay. I'm not brave. I'm just stubborn. Same thing sometimes. They finished the dishes and headed upstairs to check on the kids. Sadie was already asleep, curled around her favorite stuffed horse, mouth open slightly. Luke's light was still on, book abandoned on his chest, glasses askew. Mara carefully removed the glasses, marked his page, turned off his light. Ethan watched from the doorway, marveling at how natural she'd become at these small acts of caretaking. In their room, when had it become their room instead of just his, they got ready for bed in the synchronized dance of people who'd learned to share space. Mara claimed the left side, Ethan the right. She read for 20 minutes before sleep. He passed out the moment his head hit the pillow. She slept with the window cracked. He woke at 5:30 regardless of when he went to bed. But that night, as Mara settled against him and sleep pulled him under, Ethan had a realization that jerked him back to wakefulness. Mara? I want to marry you. She went very still. What? Not right now, not tomorrow, but someday, when you're ready. I want to marry you. She propped herself up on one elbow, studied his face in the darkness. I thought we agreed marriage was complicated. It is. But I don't care. I want to stand up in front of everyone and say, you're mine and I'm yours. I want it to be official, not just for me or for you, but for the kids, so they know we're permanent. Ethan, you don't have to answer now. I'm not even really asking yet. I'm just telling you that's where I'm headed, so you know. So there's no surprises. Mara was quiet for so long he thought maybe she'd fallen asleep. Then she said very softly, ask me again in 6 months. If you still feel the same way, I will. And if I say yes, then we'll have the biggest damn wedding Millbrook has ever seen. Or we'll go to the courthouse with just the kids. Whatever you want. I want cake. He laughed. Obviously. Madison's parents were right about that. 6 months, Ethan. Ask me in 6 months. Deal. She settled back against him and he held her until her breathing evened out into sleep. But Ethan stayed awake a while longer, watching the ceiling and planning a future he'd stopped believing in years ago. December brought the kind of cold that made your lungs ache and your bones remember every old injury. The farm settled into winter routines, shorter days, longer nights, work that focused on survival rather than growth. Marcus proved invaluable, handling the morning chores so Ethan could focus on the kids and breakfast. Mara mastered the wood stove, keeping the house warm enough that they only needed layers instead of full winter gear indoors. Luke's birthday came first, 11 years old, on the cusp of adolescence, still young enough to get excited about cake, but old enough to pretend he wasn't. They kept it simple. Family dinner, chocolate cake, presents that consisted of books, and a new jacket he'd been eyeing. But the real gift came from Mara. She'd been working on it for weeks in secret, and when she presented it to Luke after cake, his face did something complicated. It was a photo album. Not fancy, just a simple binder with plastic sleeves, but filled with pictures of the past 6 months. Luke helping with farm work. Luke and Ryan building something in the barn. Luke at the kitchen table doing homework while Mara cooked. Luke and Sadie playing in the first snow. The 4 of them at Thanksgiving, crowded around the table. The last page had a note in Mara's handwriting. This year, you became part of my story. Thank you for letting me be part of yours. Love, Mara. Luke stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at her with eyes that were too bright. This is really cool. I'm glad you like it. I do, a lot. He paused. Can I hug you? You never have to ask. He hugged her fiercely, and over his head Mara met Ethan's eyes. The look that passed between them said everything words couldn't. Christmas preparations began in earnest. Sadie insisted on a tree tall enough to touch the ceiling, which meant Ethan and Marcus spent an afternoon in the woods, finding one that met her exacting specifications. Mara and the kids made decorations, paper chains and popcorn strings, and salt dough ornaments that Sadie painted with more enthusiasm than precision. Shopping was harder. Money was tight despite selling the North Pasture, and Ethan wanted to give the kids a good Christmas without going into debt. Mara solved this by suggesting they make most of the gifts. She'd sew new dresses for Sadie's dolls. Ethan could build the shelf Luke had been wanting. They'd go in together on one nice present each. It felt right somehow. Less commercial, more meaningful. But 3 days before Christmas, Ethan got a call that changed everything. Jennifer wanted to visit. She'd called out of nowhere, her voice bright with forced cheer, asking if she could come for Christmas Eve, just for a few hours. She missed the kids. She wanted to see them. She had presents. Ethan stood in the barn where he'd gone to take the call in private, phone pressed to his ear, trying to process. When did you decide this? I've been thinking about it for a while. I miss them, Ethan. I miss being their mother. You could have been their mother any time in the last 3 years. You chose not to. That's not fair. Fair, Jennifer. You call once a week for 15 minutes. You missed Luke's birthday. You haven't visited in 18 months. And now you want to show up on Christmas Eve and what? Play happy family for a few hours? I made mistakes. I'm trying to fix them. By disrupting their Christmas? By being present. Isn't that what you always wanted? Ethan closed his eyes, counted to 10, reminded himself that anger wouldn't help. I need to talk to the kids. And Mara, this isn't just my decision. Mara? Your housekeeper? My partner. And yes, her opinion matters. She's been here. She's been raising your children while you were finding yourself in Seattle or Portland or wherever you ended up. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, I deserve that. You deserve worse. But I'm trying to be civil for the kids' sake. So can I come? I'll call you back. He hung up, stood there in the cold barn, and tried to figure out how to tell his children that their mother wanted to visit. How to tell Mara that the ghost she'd been competing with might become flesh and blood for a few hours. He found Mara in the kitchen, making dinner, humming something off-key. She looked up when he came in, took one look at his face, and set down the spoon. What happened? Jennifer called. She wants to visit. Christmas Eve. All the color drained from Mara's face. Oh. I told her I needed to talk to you and the kids first. What do you want to do? I want to tell her no. I want to protect the kids from getting their hopes up and then disappointed again. But I also can't make that decision without them. Mara nodded slowly. We should tell them. Let them choose. You sure? No. But it's the right thing to do. They gathered the kids after dinner, explained the situation as gently as possible. Sadie's face lit up immediately. Her mother wanted to see her. This was the best Christmas present ever. Luke's reaction was harder to read, his expression closing off in a way that reminded Ethan painfully of himself. Do you want her to come? Ethan asked them both. Yes, Sadie practically shouted. Luke shrugged. I guess. Luke, I need a real answer. I don't know, okay? Part of me wants to see her. Part of me thinks it's just going to make everything worse. But Sadie wants to, so yeah, she can come. Ethan called Jennifer back, told her she could visit Christmas Eve afternoon for a few hours. He heard the relief in her voice, the gratitude, and felt nothing but dread. That night, Mara was quiet. She went through the motions of bedtime routine, but her mind was clearly elsewhere. When they were finally alone, she sat on the edge of the bed and said, I should leave when she's here. What? No. Ethan, she's their mother. She should have time with them without me hovering. You're not hovering. You live here. This is your home. But maybe it would be easier. Easier for who? For Jennifer? She doesn't get to dictate your presence in your own house. I don't want to make things awkward. Things are already awkward, but you running away doesn't fix that. It just tells the kids that when things get hard, people leave. And that's the opposite of what we've been teaching them. Mara looked at him with eyes full of fear. What if she wants them back? What if she's ready to be their mother again and they choose her over me? Mara, I know it's irrational. I know I'm spiraling, but what if? He crossed to her, knelt in front of where she sat, took her hands. Then we'll deal with it. Together. But that's not going to happen. Jennifer left. She made her choice. And you've been here every day since. The kids know that. They feel it. One visit doesn't erase 3 years. You don't know that. I know my kids. And I know you. Trust me on this. She nodded, but the fear didn't leave her eyes. And Ethan spent the next 2 days watching her retreat into herself, building walls he thought they'd torn down months ago. Christmas Eve arrived gray and cold, with snow threatening but not quite falling. The house was decorated, presents wrapped, a ham in the oven filling the air with the smell of cloves and brown sugar. Sadie had changed outfits 3 times, trying to find the perfect thing to wear for her mother. Luke sat at the table pretending to read, his eyes flicking to the window every few minutes. Mara moved through the house like a ghost, present but not really there. Jennifer arrived at 2 p.m. in a rental car, wearing a coat that probably cost more than Ethan made in a month. She looked good, rested, healthy, like someone who'd been living a life free of farm work and single parenting. Her smile was bright and nervous when Ethan opened the door. Hi. Jennifer? Can I come in? He stepped aside, let her enter. She looked around the house, cleaner than when she'd lived there, warmer somehow, and her smile faltered slightly. It looks good. Different. Mara's touch. Right, your partner. Jennifer's voice was carefully neutral. Is she here? In the kitchen. Should I say hello? That's up to you. Before Jennifer could decide, Sadie came thundering down the stairs and launched herself at her mother. Mommy! Jennifer caught her, held her, and for a moment her face showed genuine emotion, love mixed with regret, mixed with something that might have been grief. Hi, baby. Look at you. You're so big. I'm 6.5 now. I lost 2 teeth, see? Sadie demonstrated. Luke appeared more slowly, hands in his pockets. Hi, Mom. Luke, sweetheart. Jennifer moved to hug him, and he let her, but his arms stayed at his sides. You've grown so much. People do that. Ethan shot him a warning look, but Jennifer just laughed weakly. Yes, they do. Mara emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She and Jennifer looked at each other for a long, loaded moment. Jennifer, Mara said evenly, welcome. Thank you, and thank you for taking such good care of my children. They're easy to care for. Another pause. Then Jennifer said, could I talk to you? Privately? Just for a minute? Mara looked at Ethan, who nodded slightly. Okay. They disappeared into the rarely used dining room, closing the door behind them. Ethan stayed with the kids, listening to Sadie chatter about school and dance and everything Jennifer had missed while Luke maintained his careful distance. In the dining room, Jennifer and Mara faced each other across the old oak table. I want to thank you, Jennifer started, for being here for them, for loving them. You don't need to thank me for that. I do. Because I couldn't do it. I couldn't be the mother they needed, and you stepped in and did what I couldn't. Jennifer's voice cracked. That makes you better than me. That's not, it is true. And I need you to know I'm not here to disrupt things. I'm not here to take them back or reclaim my place. I just wanted to see them, to give them presents, to let them know I still love them even though I failed them. Mara studied her for a long moment. They do know you love them, but they also know you left, and that's a wound that doesn't heal just because you show up with presents. I know that, but maybe... Jennifer swallowed hard. Maybe this can be a start, not to getting back together with Ethan or resuming custody, just to being present in their lives in whatever way they'll let me. And that means accepting that you're their person now, that you're the one they turn to, and I'm okay with that. I have to be. Are you, though? Okay with it? No, it kills me, but what kills me more is thinking they don't have anyone, and they do. They have you, so thank you. When they emerged, both women had been crying. The kids looked worried, but Mara smiled and said, Everything's fine. Your mom just wanted to say hi. The visit proceeded with the awkward choreography of adults trying to make children comfortable. Jennifer had brought gifts, thoughtful ones, things the kids actually wanted, which suggested she'd been paying more attention than Ethan gave her credit for. Luke got books, Sadie got art supplies, and a stuffed animal. They ate ham and sides, Jennifer complimenting the food and Mara deflecting the praise. They looked at pictures and listened to Sadie's stories and watched Luke slowly thaw enough to actually talk to his mother about school and Ryan and the new calves. And through it all, Ethan watched Mara hold herself together with visible effort, watched Jennifer try to be present, while knowing she'd always be slightly outside this family she'd left behind. At 5 o'clock, Jennifer stood to leave. She hugged both kids, promised to call more often, to visit again if they wanted. Luke nodded non-committally. Sadie made her promise. At the door, Jennifer turned to Ethan. "Thank you for letting me come. They needed to see you. I know I don't have the right to ask this, but take care of them, and take care of her." She nodded toward where Mara stood with the kids. "She's good for you, for all of you." "I know. Don't mess it up the way I did." "I'm trying not to." Jennifer left, and Ethan closed the door behind her, feeling like they'd all just survived something difficult but necessary. The kids seemed subdued but okay. Sadie clutching her new stuffed animal, Luke already reading one of his new books, but Mara had disappeared. He found her in their bedroom, sitting on the floor with her back against the bed, crying silently. "Hey!" He sat down beside her. "Talk to me." "She was so nice, so understanding, and I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't because she was just sad. Just a woman who made mistakes and is trying to live with them." "Yeah." And the kids were happy to see her, especially Sadie, and part of me was terrified they'd realize she's their real mother and I'm just the replacement. "You're not a replacement." "I know, logically I know, but fear isn't logical." Ethan wrapped an arm around her, pulled her close. "Did you see Luke? How he barely looked at her? How he stayed near you the whole time? Or how Sadie showed her the drawing you helped her make but didn't ask her to stay for dinner? They love Jennifer, but you're their person now. That's not changing." Mara leaned against him, exhausted. "This is harder than I thought it would be. Being a parent? Being everything. Partner, parent figure, the person who stayed. It's a lot of pressure. You don't have to be perfect. I want to be. For them. For you. We don't need perfect. We just need you. Exactly as you are." She was quiet for a while, then said softly, "Ask me again." "Ask you what?" "What you asked me a few weeks ago. About 6 months from now." "Mara, you don't have to—" "I know I don't, but ask me anyway." He pulled back so he could see her face, took her hands in his. "Mara Keene, will you marry me? Not now, maybe not for a while, but eventually. Will you marry me and make this official, and let me stand up in front of everyone and declare that you're mine and I'm yours?" She smiled through her tears. "Yes, eventually, when we're both ready, yes." He kissed her, tasting salt and promises, feeling like he'd just been handed something precious he'd spend the rest of his life trying to deserve. Downstairs they heard Sadie calling for them. Something about cookies and Christmas movies, and could they please come down right now because it was Christmas Eve and they had traditions to do. Mara wiped her eyes, stood, pulled Ethan to his feet. "We should go. Traditions wait for no one. Especially not Sadie's traditions." They went downstairs hand in hand, and the kids looked up from where they were spreading blankets on the living room floor. Sadie took one look at their faces and said, "Were you kissing? That's gross." "Very gross," Luke agreed, but he was smiling. "The absolute worst," Ethan said, but he didn't let go of Mara's hand. They spent the evening watching movies and eating too many cookies and pretending nothing had changed when really everything had. Tomorrow was Christmas. Next week was a new year. 6 months from now, maybe sooner, maybe later, he'd marry this woman who'd arrived broken and stayed anyway. But for now, in this moment, with his children piled on the floor and Mara's hand in his, Ethan Harper was exactly where he needed to be. Christmas morning broke cold and brilliant, sunlight flooding through windows and turning frost into diamonds. Sadie woke the house at 6 a.m. with the subtlety of a car alarm, thundering down the hallway shouting that Santa had come and there were presents and could everyone please wake up immediately. Ethan groaned, pulled a pillow over his head. Mara was already sitting up, hair wild, wearing one of his old t-shirts that had somehow migrated to her side of the closet. "Your daughter has no concept of reasonable hours," she said, but she was smiling. Our daughter, Ethan corrected, the word feeling right in his mouth. You said yes last night. That makes her ours. Mara's expression went soft. Our daughter. That's going to take some getting used to. You've got time. They made their way downstairs to find Sadie vibrating with excitement in front of the tree and Luke trying to look unimpressed while clearly also excited about the pile of presents. The living room was warm from the wood stove, the tree lights reflecting off tinsel and homemade ornaments. They opened presents slowly, savoring it. Sadie loved everything. The doll dresses Mara had sewn, the art supplies from Jennifer, a wooden puzzle box Ethan had made. Luke's new shelf was already assembled in his room, a project Ethan had worked on late at night after the kids were asleep. He ran his hands over the smooth wood, tested the joints, and said, "This is really good, Dad." "Oh, thanks, buddy. Can I help you make stuff sometimes? Like actually help, not just hand you tools?" "Yeah, I'd like that." The last present was small, wrapped in newspaper because they'd run out of proper paper. It was addressed to Mara in Ethan's handwriting. She looked at him questioningly. "It's not much," he said, "but I wanted you to have something." Inside was a key on a simple chain. Not fancy, just a regular house key, but attached to it was a small metal tag engraved with words, "Home is where you choose to stay." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, I know you already have a key. This one's different. It's not about access, it's about belonging. You belong here, with us. This is your home." She pressed the key to her chest, unable to speak. Sadie crawled into her lap. Luke moved closer, and Ethan wrapped his arms around all of them. They stayed like that for a long moment, four people who'd found each other in unlikely circumstances and decided to become family. Later, after breakfast and the chaos of wrapping paper cleanup, Mara found a quiet moment on the porch. The cold bit at her exposed skin, but she needed the air, needed to process the past 24 hours. Jennifer's visit had shaken something loose inside her, fear she'd thought she'd conquered, doubts she'd thought she'd buried. The door opened behind her. Luke stepped out wearing his new jacket, hands shoved in pockets. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just thinking." "About my mom?" "A little." He came to stand beside her, looking out at the snow-covered fields. "She's not coming back, not to live here. You know that, right?" "I think so, but it's hard not to worry. She made her choice. And it wasn't us." Luke's voice was matter-of-fact, no bitterness, just stating facts. "You made a different choice. You chose to stay even when it was hard. That matters more." "When did you get so wise?" "I'm 11. I know everything." Mara laughed, pulled him into a side hug. "Thank you for saying that. I mean it, though. You're not a replacement or a stand-in or whatever you think you are. You're just Mara, and that's enough." She kissed the top of his head, and he didn't pull away. Progress. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a blur of leftovers and lazy mornings, and the kind of domesticity that would have terrified Mara a year ago. She and Ethan talked about wedding plans in vague terms, nothing concrete, just possibilities. Small ceremony or big party, summer or fall, church or outdoor. Every conversation ended with, "We've got time," and both of them meaning it. The new year arrived with snow and wind and temperatures that made going outside feel like a punishment. School resumed, routines reestablished, and life settled back into its familiar rhythm. But something had shifted. The family felt more solid somehow, like they'd weathered a test and come through stronger. In late January, Mara got a phone call that changed everything. It was from a lawyer in Billings, a woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in family law. She'd been referred by Nora Bell, who apparently told everyone she knew about Mara's situation. "Miss Keene, I understand you're in a domestic partnership with Ethan Harper and serving as a parental figure to his children," Patricia said, voice crisp and professional. Yes, that's accurate. "And you're concerned about your legal standing. What happens if something happens to Mr. Harper, custody arrangements, that sort of thing?" Mara's heart started pounding. She hadn't articulated these fears to anyone except Ethan, but they lived in the back of her mind constantly. "Yes, I worry about that. There are options. Even without marriage, you can establish legal protections. Guardianship arrangements, medical power of attorney for the children, co-parenting agreements. It would require Jennifer Harper's cooperation, but it's possible. I don't know if she'd agree to that. Have you asked? Mara hadn't. The idea of calling Jennifer and asking for legal rights to her children felt presumptuous and terrifying. But Patricia was right. She needed to ask. That evening, after the kids were in bed, she told Ethan about the call. Legal protections, he repeated. Like what, exactly? Guardianship if something happens to you. The ability to make medical decisions for the kids if you're not available. Basically, making me legally recognized as their caregiver. Makes sense. But it requires Jennifer's agreement. Ethan was quiet for a moment, thinking. She might say yes. After Christmas, after seeing how things are, she might actually say yes. Or she might think I'm trying to replace her and refuse. Only one way to find out. Mara called Jennifer the next day, hands shaking as she dialed. The conversation was awkward and stilted at first, but Jennifer listened as Mara explained the situation, the legal limbo she existed in, the fear of what might happen if Ethan got injured again, or worse, the desire to protect the kids. You want me to sign over parental rights? Jennifer asked carefully. No, not that. Just shared custody on paper, legal recognition that I'm part of their lives. You'd still be their mother. I'd just be also responsible. Jennifer was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, I'll think about it. Can I call you back? Of course. 2 days later, Jennifer called back. I'll do it. I'll sign whatever papers the lawyer needs, on one condition. Mara's stomach dropped. What condition? You have to promise you'll let me be part of their lives, not as their primary parent. I know I gave that up, but as their mother who loves them and wants to know them. Birthdays, holidays when it works, phone calls. Can you promise me that? Yes, I can promise that. Then let's do it. The paperwork took 6 weeks to process. Patricia Chen was thorough, drawing up agreements that protected everyone's interests while recognizing the reality of the situation. Mara would be legal guardian in the event something happened to Ethan. She'd have medical decision-making authority. She'd be recognized as a parental figure with responsibilities and rights. When they finally signed everything in Patricia's office in early March, Mara felt something inside her unlock. She wasn't just the woman who lived with Ethan. She wasn't just the housekeeper who'd become family. She was legally, officially, one of their parents. Jennifer had come to sign her portion of the paperwork, and afterward, the three of them stood in the parking lot in awkward silence. Thank you, Mara said finally, for trusting me with them. Jennifer's eyes were bright. Thank you for loving them when I couldn't figure out how. That's not nothing. They still need you, you know that, right? Having me doesn't erase you. I know, but it helps to hear it. They parted ways, and Mara drove home feeling lighter than she had in months. When she walked into the farmhouse, Luke and Sadie were doing homework at the kitchen table, arguing about whether dinosaurs could have been purple. Some of them were definitely purple, Sadie insisted. We don't know what color they were. That's the whole point. But they could have been purple. You can't prove they weren't. Mara stood in the doorway, watching them, and felt her eyes sting with tears. These were her kids. Not biologically, not originally, but in every way that mattered. They were hers. Mara? Sadie looked up. Are you crying? Happy tears. Why are you happy crying? Because I get to be your parent now. Officially, legally. Sadie processed this. Does that mean you have to come to parent-teacher conferences? Yes. And sign my report card? Yep. And tell me to eat my vegetables? Absolutely. Cool. Sadie went back to her homework like Mara hadn't just rearranged their entire legal relationship. Luke was quieter, but he looked at Mara with something like relief. So if Dad gets hurt again or something happens, you don't have to leave? I don't have to leave. I'm here for good. Good. He turned back to his homework. Now tell Sadie that dinosaurs were not purple. I will tell her no such thing. Purple dinosaurs are scientifically plausible. You're supposed to be on my side. I'm on the side of imagination and wonder. Luke groaned, but he was smiling. Spring came slowly to Montana that year, winter reluctant to release its grip. But eventually, the snow melted, the creek ran high with runoff, and the fields began to green. Marcus took on more responsibility, freeing up Ethan's time. The sale of the North pasture meant they could hire seasonal help without panic. The farm started to feel less like a burden and more like what it was supposed to be, a way of life, not a test to pass. In late April, Ethan took Mara to dinner in Billings. They left the kids with Nora, who was delighted to babysit and immediately began planning an evening of cookies and inappropriate amounts of television. The restaurant was nicer than anywhere they usually went, and Mara felt underdressed in her simple sweater and jeans. "Why are we here?" she asked as they were seated. "Because we never go anywhere. Because you deserve nice things. Because I wanted to take you on an actual date instead of just collapsing on the couch after the kids go to bed." "I like collapsing on the couch." "So do I. But this is good too." They ordered food that came in portions too small and prices too high, but it was delicious, and the conversation flowed easy. They talked about the farm, the kids, summer plans. They talked about Luke's improving grades and Sadie's upcoming dance recital. They talked about everything and nothing, two people who'd learned each other so well that silence was comfortable and words were optional. Over dessert, something chocolate and pretentious, Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "I was going to wait until summer," he said. "Make it 6 months exactly like you asked. But I can't wait anymore." Mara's heart started pounding. "Ethan, Mara Keene, will you marry me? For real this time, not hypothetically. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're mine. I want to grow old with you and raise those kids together and figure out what comes after. I want all of it, with you." He pulled out a ring, simple, a single small diamond on a silver band, nothing flashy. It looked like something that had been chosen with care, not just grabbed from a jewelry store display. "I know it's not much. It's perfect." She was crying now, not bothering to hide it. Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly. Later, she'd learned he'd asked Luke for help figuring out her size, and Luke had stolen one of her other rings for reference. But in that moment, all that mattered was the weight of it on her hand and the certainty in Ethan's eyes. "When?" he asked. "Summer, like we planned. Something small. Just family and a few friends." "Where?" "The farm. Where else?" They drove home with Mara's hand resting on the console between them, ring catching the light from passing street lamps. When they picked up the kids, Sadie immediately noticed. "What's that?" She grabbed Mara's hand, examining the ring. "Is that a diamond?" "It is." "Why do you have a diamond?" "Because your dad asked me to marry him and I said yes." Sadie shrieked so loud Nora came running from the kitchen thinking someone had been injured. Luke looked between them, processing, then broke into the biggest smile Mara had ever seen on his face. "So you're going to be our stepmom?" he asked. "I guess I am." "Cool." He paused. "Can I still just call you Mara?" "You can call me whatever you want." "Okay, then I'll call you Mara. But like, official Mara. Legal Mara." "That works." The drive back to the farm was loud with Sadie's excited planning. She needed a dress. Could she be the flower girl? Would there be cake? Could Madison come? What about the chickens? Could the chickens be in the wedding? "No chickens," Ethan said firmly. "But they're part of the family." "Chickens are not wedding guests." "That's discrimination," Luke snorted. "Against what? Birds?" "Against chickens specifically." Mara listened to them bicker with a fullness in her chest that felt like it might crack her open. This was her family. These ridiculous, wonderful people were choosing her just as much as she was choosing them. Wedding planning proved simultaneously easier and harder than expected. Easier because they both wanted the same thing, simple, meaningful, focused on family rather than spectacle. Harder because Sadie had opinions about everything, and Luke kept making sarcastic commentary that didn't help but definitely entertained. They set the date for late July, when the farm would be at its most beautiful. Mara found a dress at a consignment shop in Billings. Nothing fancy, just a simple white sundress that made her feel pretty without trying too hard. Ethan would wear the same suit he'd worn to his father's funeral, but with a new tie that Sadie helped pick out. The guest list was small. Nora Bell, Marcus, a few neighbors, Luke's friend Ryan and his mom, Sadie's friend Madison, and her domestic partner parents, Jennifer. That last one was Mara's idea, and it surprised everyone, including herself. "You want your ex-wife at your wedding?" Nora asked when she heard. She's the kid's mother, Mara said simply. And she's been supportive through all of this. It feels right to include her. Jennifer cried when Mara called to invite her, said yes immediately, and promised to bring a gift that didn't involve drama. As July approached, the farm transformed, not through expensive decorations or professional planning, but through the efforts of people who cared. Marcus mowed the field where they'd set up chairs. Nora organized a food committee with other neighbors, promising a spread that would put restaurants to shame. Luke and Ryan built an arch out of wood and wire where Ethan and Mara would stand, and Sadie decorated it with wildflowers the morning of. The day itself arrived hot and clear, the kind of Montana summer day that reminded people why they endured the winters. Mara woke early, before Ethan, and slipped out to the porch with coffee. The farm stretched out before her, familiar now in every detail. She'd learned its rhythms, its moods, its difficult beauty. A year ago, she'd been living in a manufactured home off a dirt road, cleaning houses for survival, convinced she'd spend the rest of her life alone. Now she was getting married, becoming a legal parent, building a life she'd thought was reserved for people less broken than her. "You're thinking too loud." She turned to find Ethan in the doorway, hair wild from sleep, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt that had seen better years. "Nervous?" he asked, joining her. "Terrified. You?" "Same, but the good kind of terrified." "Is there a good kind?" "Yeah, the kind that means you're about to do something that matters." They sat together watching the sun rise, drinking coffee, not talking much. Inside, the house would soon erupt into chaos, kids to wrangle, last-minute preparations, the controlled panic of people trying to make everything perfect. But for now, in this quiet moment, it was just the two of them. "Thank you," Mara said. "For what?" "For coming after me. That day I left. For not letting me run. Thank you for staying." "I almost didn't." "I know, but you did. That's what matters." The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m., giving the worst of the heat time to pass. By 3:30, guests were arriving, chairs filling up, the nervous energy of anticipation building. Mara got ready in her bedroom with Sadie's help, the little girl taking her role as assistant very seriously. "You look beautiful," Sadie announced when Mara was finally dressed, hair done in a simple braid, the consignment shop dress fitting perfectly. "Thank you, baby." "Are you scared?" "A little." "Don't be. My dad really loves you, and me and Luke love you, so it's going to be perfect." From downstairs, music started. Someone's phone connected to a portable speaker, playing something acoustic and gentle. Luke appeared in the doorway. "They're ready when you are." Mara took a deep breath, took Sadie's hand, and walked downstairs. The ceremony itself was simple. No professional officiant, just Dale, Ethan's friend and neighbor, who'd gotten ordained online specifically for this. No elaborate vows written on cards, just honest words spoken from the heart. Ethan went first, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Mara, you showed up at my door a year ago looking for work. What you gave us was so much more than that. You gave us stability and love, and a reason to believe that broken things can be fixed. You chose us when you didn't have to. You stayed when it got hard. You made our house a home and our family complete. I promise to choose you back every day, to show up for you the way you've shown up for us, to love you through the easy days and the hard ones, to build a life with you that's worth all the fear it took to get here." Mara's turn. She'd written things down, practiced in the mirror, but standing there in front of everyone, the words disappeared. So she just spoke. "I came here believing I wasn't enough, that I'd failed at being what people needed, that the best I could hope for was to be useful without being attached. And then I met you, and Luke, and Sadie, and you didn't just accept me, you made room for me. You let me be imperfect and scared and still loved me anyway. You gave me a family when I thought that door had closed forever. I promise to honor that gift, to show up every day, to love these children as fiercely as if they came from my body, to be your partner in everything, joy, struggle, ordinary Tuesday mornings, and extraordinary moments like this. I promise to stay, even when staying is scary, because you're worth it. This family is worth it." Dale pronounced them married, and Ethan kissed her like they were the only two people on the farm. Sadie cheered, Luke clapped, and the small gathering erupted in applause. The reception was gloriously chaotic. Food that Nora had promised appeared in abundance: grilled chicken, potato salad, corn on the cob, pies of every variety. Someone had strung lights between trees, creating a canopy of warm glow as evening fell. Music played, people danced. Sadie demonstrated her recital routine approximately 47 times. Jennifer approached Mara around sunset, holding a glass of wine and wearing an expression that was part joy, part sorrow. "Congratulations," she said. Thank you. And thank you for coming." "I wouldn't have missed it." Jennifer paused. "They look happy, the kids, happier than I remember them being. They've been through a lot. We all have." "I know, and I know I don't have the right to be proud of you, but I am. What you've built here, it's remarkable. We built it, all of us. You too, in a way. You letting me be part of their lives, signing those guardianship papers, that meant everything. I signed papers. You showed up every day. There's a difference." Jennifer set down her glass. "I should probably go. Let you enjoy your party. But I wanted to say, take care of them. And let them take care of you. That's the part I never figured out, the letting people in. Don't make my mistake." She hugged Mara quickly, said goodbye to the kids, and left. Ethan found Mara a few minutes later, watching the taillights disappear. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking about second chances. How rare they are. How lucky we are to get them." "Speaking of second chances," he held out his hand. "Dance with me?" "There's barely any room." "So we'll make room." They danced in the grass while Luke rolled his eyes and Sadie tried to join in, stepping on both their feet. Marcus turned up the music. Nora started a conga line that somehow everyone got roped into, and the serious moment dissolved into laughter. As night fell completely and the party began winding down, the four of them, Ethan, Mara, Luke, and Sadie, ended up sitting together on the porch steps. Sadie was half asleep on Mara's lap, Luke leaning against Ethan's shoulder. "Today was perfect," Sadie mumbled. "It really was," Mara agreed. "Are you guys going on a honeymoon?" Luke asked. Ethan and Mara looked at each other. They talked about it, decided against it. Leaving the farm felt wrong. Leaving the kids felt worse. And honestly, they didn't need a beach or a fancy hotel to feel married. "Not right now," Ethan said. "Maybe someday. But right now, we're exactly where we want to be." "Good," Luke said, "because I don't want you to leave." "We're not going anywhere," Mara promised. They sat there until Sadie fell completely asleep and had to be carried to bed, until Luke yawned so wide his jaw cracked, until the last of the guests had left and the farm was quiet again. Mara and Ethan cleaned up the worst of the mess, then gave up and decided the rest could wait until morning. In their bedroom, officially their bedroom now, shared name on the mortgage paperwork and everything, they got ready for bed with the comfortable efficiency of people who'd been doing this for months, but the nervous excitement of newlyweds. "How does it feel?" Ethan asked as they settled into bed. "Being married?" "Exactly the same as yesterday, but also completely different." "That makes no sense." "I know, but it's true." She turned to face him, tracing the scar on his palm from the fence accident. "We're official now. Legal. A real family. We were a real family before the paperwork." "I know, but the paperwork helps." He pulled her closer. "I love you, Mrs. Harper." "I love you too, though I'm keeping my name. Mara Keene Harper. Just Keene. I like who I am. Don't want to change it." "Fair enough. I love you, Mara Keene." "Better." They fell asleep tangled together, and Mara's last thought before unconsciousness claimed her was how remarkable it was that she'd gone from broken to whole, from alone to surrounded, from convinced she wasn't enough to certain she was everything these people needed. The months that followed the wedding were ordinary in the best possible way. Summer gave way to fall. Luke started 6th grade. Sadie continued to ask impossible questions and demand answers about everything from quantum physics to why chickens couldn't wear hats. The school fall festival arrived in late September, one of those community events that the whole town turned out for. Booths selling crafts and baked goods, games for kids, a dunk tank that inevitably featured the principal getting soaked. Ethan and Mara took of the kids, planning to stay an hour and leave before the chaos peaked. They stayed 3 hours. Sadie dragged Mara from booth to booth, winning a goldfish at the ring toss that she immediately named Sparkle and declared her best friend. Luke and Ryan tested their aim at various games, pretending they were too old for this while clearly having the time of their lives. Ethan bought everyone overpriced lemonade and corn dogs and didn't complain about the cost. They were watching Sadie's third attempt at the beanbag toss when another parent from Sadie's class approached, a woman Mara vaguely recognized from pickup but had never really talked to. "Your daughter is adorable," the woman said, watching Sadie's elaborate wind-up before throwing. Mara's breath caught. She'd expected this moment, had rehearsed responses, but actually hearing someone refer to Sadie as her daughter made her throat close up. "Thank you," she managed. "How old is she?" 6. Almost 7. "Mine too. The terrible sevens, they call it." The woman laughed. "Though honestly, every age is terrible and wonderful at the same time, right?" "Absolutely." The woman wandered off to her own child, and Mara stood there processing. The woman had assumed, had looked at her and Sadie and Ethan and seen a family, hadn't questioned it, hadn't needed an explanation, just accepted it as truth. Ethan appeared beside her with fresh lemonade. "You okay? You look like you're about to cry." "Someone just called Sadie my daughter." "She is your daughter." "I know, but hearing someone else say it," she wiped her eyes, "it made it real in a new way." "Good real or scary real?" "Both. Definitely both." Later, as the sun started to set and the festival began winding down, they gathered the kids for the walk back to the truck. Sadie was exhausted but wired, carrying her goldfish bowl carefully, talking nonstop about all the things she'd seen and done. Luke walked beside Ryan, the two of them debating the physics of the dunk tank. Another parent stopped them on the way out, Karen Pritchard, of all people, whose opinion Mara had stopped caring about months ago. "Lovely family you have," Karen said, and it sounded almost sincere. "Thank you," Ethan replied, his hand finding Mara's. "The children seem very happy." "They are," Mara said, unable to resist adding, "We all are." Karen nodded, something like approval in her expression, and moved on. Mara watched her go, feeling like she'd just won a battle she hadn't known she was fighting. In the truck on the way home, Sadie fell asleep on Mara's shoulder, the goldfish bowl carefully secured between them. Luke sat in front, scrolling through photos on Ethan's phone from the festival. "We should print some of these," he said, "for the album Mara made me. Add this year's memories." "Good idea," Mara agreed. "Can I help make one for Sadie too? She should have one." "I think she'd love that." They drove through the gathering darkness, the farm waiting for them at the end of familiar roads. When they pulled into the driveway, Sadie woke up just enough to mumble about Sparkle needing a home, then fell back asleep. Luke carried the goldfish inside while Ethan carried Sadie, and Mara followed with the various prizes and leftover lemonade. Inside, the house was exactly as they'd left it, a little messy, lived in, warm. Ethan got Sadie into pajamas and bed, while Mara helped Luke set up a temporary home for Sparkle in a mixing bowl until they could get a proper tank tomorrow. When both kids were finally settled, Mara and Ethan collapsed on the couch with the kind of exhaustion that came from a good day rather than a hard one. "Someone at the festival called Sadie our daughter," Mara said, picking up the thread of conversation from earlier. "What did you say?" "Thank you, that was it. Didn't correct them, didn't explain, just said thank you." "Because she is your daughter." "Legally, on paper, yes, but today it felt real in my heart, not just my head. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." Ethan pulled her against him. "You know what I realized today?" "What?" "I can't remember what it was like before you. I know factually it was harder, lonelier, more chaotic, but I can't actually remember what it felt like. You're so woven into our lives now that trying to imagine them without you is like trying to imagine breathing without air." Mara turned to look at him. "That's either the sweetest thing you've ever said or you're having a stroke. Should I be worried?" "Definitely the stroke. Call 911. "You're ridiculous. You married me anyway. Terrible judgment on my part." "The worst." But they sat there in comfortable silence, the house settling around them. Upstairs, Sadie's voice drifted down. "Mara, can you check on Sparkle? I'm worried he's lonely." Mara went upstairs, checked on the goldfish, reassured Sadie that Sparkle was fine and would be even better once they got him a proper home tomorrow. She tucked Sadie back in, kissed her forehead, and had her hand on the light switch when Sadie spoke again. Mara? Yeah, baby? I'm glad you're my mom. I know you said you're not my mom, but you're my Mara mom, and that's even better. Mara's eyes stung. I'm glad I'm your Mara mom, too. Will you always be? Always, no matter what. I promise. Okay. Love you. Love you too, sweetheart. She turned off the light and stood in the hallway for a moment, letting the words sink in. Mara mom. Not a replacement, not a substitute, but something uniquely theirs. Something she'd earned through showing up, through staying, through choosing this family every single day. The next morning arrived with the usual chaos: coffee, breakfast negotiations, the search for Sadie's other shoe that was somehow always missing. But there was a new ease to it, a sense of rightness that hadn't been there before. Or maybe it had been there, and Mara was only now allowing herself to feel it. Over pancakes, Luke's recipe now, he'd mastered the folding technique. Sadie announced her plans for Sparkle's future. A castle, treasure, maybe some fish friends? Goldfish don't usually live with other fish, Luke said. They're aggressive. Sparkle isn't aggressive, he's gentle and kind. You've known him for 12 hours. That's long enough to know someone's character. Mara and Ethan exchanged amused glances. These kids, with their absolute certainty about everything, their fearless approach to the world, they'd saved her as much as she'd saved them. After breakfast, Ethan headed out to work with Marcus. Luke disappeared to Ryan's house for a project involving cardboard and possibly fire, which Mara had learned not to ask too many questions about. Sadie helped Mara with laundry, chattering about school and friends and her upcoming birthday. I want a big party, Sadie announced, folding a towel with more enthusiasm than precision, with everyone and cake and maybe a pony. We have ponies, well, horses. A party pony, it's different. How is it different? Party ponies wear hats. Ah, of course. They worked together in companionable chaos, Sadie's help creating approximately as much work as it solved, but Mara wouldn't have traded it for anything. This was what she'd been missing all those years, the mundane, ordinary moments of family life. The folding of laundry, the planning of birthday parties, the ridiculous conversations about party ponies. That afternoon, they went into town for a proper fish tank. The pet store was small, smelled vaguely of cedar shavings and reptiles, and had exactly one goldfish tank set up in stock. Sadie examined it with the gravity of someone making a major real estate purchase. Sparkle will love this, she declared. At the register, the clerk, a teenager with purple hair and multiple piercings, smiled at them. Getting your daughter set up? There it was again. Your daughter. Mara's breath caught, but this time she didn't hesitate. Yes, she won a goldfish at the fall festival yesterday and has very specific ideas about his living arrangements. He needs a castle, Sadie confirmed, for when he wants privacy. Totally understandable, the clerk said seriously. I'll throw in a castle on the house. They drove home with the tank, the castle, and Sadie's absolute conviction that they'd just given Sparkle the best life any fish had ever lived. When they got home, Ethan and Luke helped set everything up in Sadie's room, and they all watched as Sparkle explored his new kingdom. He loves it, Sadie breathed. Look, he's smiling. Fish don't smile, Luke said. Sparkle does. He's special. That evening, after dinner and homework and the usual bedtime negotiations, Mara found herself on the porch again. It had become her thinking spot, the place she went to process the day and prepare for the next one. Ethan joined her, as he usually did, carrying 2 mugs of tea because the evenings were getting colder. Big day, he observed. Someone else called Sadie my daughter, the clerk at the pet store. What did you say? I agreed with her. Didn't hesitate, didn't explain, just accepted it as true. Because it is true. I know. It's just, a year ago I was convinced I'd never be anyone's mother. That door was closed, locked, sealed forever. And now I have 2 kids who call me Mara Mom and need me and depend on me. It's overwhelming. Good overwhelming? The best overwhelming. She leaned against him. Thank you for this. For them. For not giving up on me when I was ready to give up on myself. Thank you for staying. For choosing us even when it was terrifying. They sat in silence, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Inside, Luke was reading, and Sadie was probably talking to Sparkle about his day. The house was warm and full, and exactly what both of them needed. "I have something to tell you," Mara said suddenly. Ethan tensed slightly. "That sounds ominous." "It's not. At least I don't think it is." She turned to face him. "I've been thinking about the future, about what comes next, and I want to make this official in one more way." "We're already married." "I know. But I want to officially adopt Luke and Sadie. Legally make them mine, not just through guardianship, but through adoption. If they want that. If you want that." Ethan stared at her, something that might have been tears gathering in his eyes. "You want to adopt them?" "I want them to be mine in every possible way. I want there to be no question, no gray area, no possibility that anyone could challenge my place in their lives. I want to be their mother, their Mara mom, officially and forever. They would love that. I love that." He pulled her close. "Let's ask them." They called a family meeting the next evening. All four of them gathered in the living room with the kind of formal gravity that suggested important discussions. Sadie looked worried, Luke looked suspicious, and both kids clearly thought they were in trouble. "Nobody's in trouble," Ethan started, the same way he always started these conversations. "We just wanted to talk to you about something important." "Are you getting divorced?" Sadie asked immediately. "Madison's parents got divorced, and she said it started with a family meeting." "We're not getting divorced. We just got married." "That's when Madison's parents got divorced, right after they got married." "We're not Madison's parents," Mara interjected gently, "and we're very happy. But I do have a question for both of you." Luke and Sadie waited, tension visible in their small shoulders. "How would you feel," Mara continued, "if I officially adopted you? Made you legally my children, not just through guardianship, but through actual adoption?" Sadie's face went through a series of rapid changes. Confusion, understanding, joy. "You mean you'd be our real mom?" "I mean, I'd be your mom on paper the same way I'm already your mom in life. Your mother would still be your mother. Jennifer would still be part of your life. But I'd also be your mother. You'd have two moms and one dad. Is that okay?" "That's more than okay." Sadie launched herself at Mara, nearly knocking her off the couch. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Luke was quieter, processing. "Would our last name change?" "Only if you wanted it to," Ethan said. "You could be Luke Harper Keene or just stay Luke Harper, or even just be Luke Keene if you preferred. It's up to you." "What about Mom? Jennifer Mom? Would she be upset?" "We'd talk to her first," Mara said. "Make sure she understands and agrees. This isn't about replacing her. It's about making official what's already true, that I'm your parent and I'm not going anywhere." Luke thought about this for a long moment. Then quietly, "I'd like that, the adoption thing. And I think I want to be Luke Harper Keene, both names, so everyone knows I'm both of yours." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "Yeah? Yeah, you've earned it. Being our mom. You show up every day, help with homework, come to my school stuff, make me fold batter instead of stirring it. That's what moms do. So yeah, let's make it official." They called Jennifer together. All four of them crowded around the phone on speaker. Mara explained what they wanted to do, her voice shaking slightly despite her best efforts to sound confident. Jennifer was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think that's wonderful." "You do? You're their mother in every way that matters. Making it legal just acknowledges reality. And I'm grateful, truly grateful, that they have you, that they're loved and cared for and have stability. So yes, if this is what you all want, I'll sign whatever paperwork is needed." "Thank you," Mara whispered. "Thank you for loving them the way I should have but couldn't figure out how. That's the greater gift." The adoption process took months of paperwork and court dates and interviews. But in late January, 11 months after the wedding, they stood in a courthouse in Billings with Patricia Chen representing them and a judge who smiled warmly throughout the proceedings. "Do you, Mara Keene, accept full parental responsibility for Luke Daniel Harper and Sadie Marie Harper?" the judge asked. "I do." "And do you, Luke and Sadie, accept Mara Keene as your legal mother?" "I do," Luke said clearly. "Yes!" Sadie practically shouted. The judge signed the papers, made it official, and just like that, Mara became what she'd been in practice for over a year, their mother. Not their stepmother, not their guardian, but their mother. Outside the courthouse, Luke looked at his adoption papers with something like wonder. "So it's really official now?" "Really official," Mara confirmed. "Cool." He paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything. Will you teach me to sew, like how you made the doll dresses for Sadie? I want to make something for Ryan's birthday, and I thought maybe a pillow or something." Mara's throat closed up. "Yeah, I can teach you to sew." "Thanks. Mom." It was the first time he'd called her that. Not Mara Mom, not Mara, just Mom. Simple and perfect and absolutely shattering. The drive home was quiet, all of them processing what had just happened. Sadie fell asleep in the back seat, adoption certificate clutched in her hands like a treasure. Luke stared out the window, but Mara could see him smiling in the reflection. When they got home, Marcus was there doing evening chores. He congratulated them, hugged Mara, told the kids he was proud of them. Nora Bell appeared with a cake. Of course there was cake. Important occasions required cake. And they had an impromptu celebration in the kitchen. That night, after everyone had left and the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, Ethan and Mara sat on their bed, adoption certificates spread out between them. "We did it," Mara said. "You did it. You became their mother." "I've been their mother. This just made it official." "How does it feel?" She thought about it. Like coming home after a long time away. Like finding something you didn't know you'd lost. Like being exactly where I'm supposed to be. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. I know. Finally, I actually know that. They put the certificates in the safe with the marriage license and the guardianship papers and all the other documents that told the story of how they'd become a family. Then they went to bed, and Mara fell asleep feeling more complete than she'd ever felt in her life. The years that followed were ordinary and extraordinary in equal measure. Luke grew tall and thoughtful, developing an interest in engineering that surprised no one. Sadie remained dramatic and creative, eventually trading dance for theater and bringing home stray animals with alarming frequency. Sparkle the goldfish lived for 3 years, an impressive run that Sadie attributed to his castle and loving home. The farm stabilized. With Marcus as a full-time employee and occasional seasonal help, Ethan found time to actually rest, to be present for school events and family dinners and ordinary Tuesday evenings. The land provided enough to support them without consuming them, the balance he'd never found with Jennifer but somehow managed with Mara. Jennifer visited twice a year, usually around the kids' birthdays. The visits were cordial, sometimes even warm. Luke and Sadie loved their mother, but no longer needed her the way they once had. They'd learned that family wasn't about biology or original claims. It was about who showed up, who stayed, who chose you every single day. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Ethan and Mara finally took that honeymoon they'd postponed. Just a week in Yellowstone, hiking and watching geysers, and sleeping in a cabin that had actual silence. Luke and Sadie stayed with Nora Bell, who spoiled them rotten and sent daily photos of their adventures. "We should do this more often," Mara said one evening, watching the sun set over the mountains. "Take vacations? Have time just for us. Remember, we're not just parents and farmers and partners. We're also 2 people who fell in love." I remember. I remember exactly how it happened. "You showed up looking for work and gave me the most honest thing anyone had ever said to me. That I wasn't fit for any man? That you could love my children." Ethan pulled her close. "You were wrong about the first part, by the way. You're perfect for this man." "That's debatable." "Not to me." They kissed as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold, 2 people who'd found each other at exactly the right moment, even if it hadn't felt like the right moment at the time. When they returned home, the kids had made welcome home banners, and Marcus had kept the farm running smoothly, and everything was exactly as they'd left it, but also somehow better, because they'd had time away to remember why they loved it. Life continued its ordinary rhythm. Seasons changed, kids grew, the farm endured. There were hard days when nothing went right, and harder days when old fears resurfaced. But there were more good days. Days when Sadie's laughter filled the house. Days when Luke actually talked about his feelings. Days when Ethan looked at Mara like she'd hung the moon. On Luke's 16th birthday, he asked for driving lessons from both parents. On Sadie's 13th, she asked if they could finally get a dog because Sparkle and various other small pets weren't enough anymore. On their 10th anniversary, Mara and Ethan renewed their vows in the same spot they'd gotten married, with teenage kids who rolled their eyes but secretly thought it was romantic. And through it all, every single day, Mara woke up in that farmhouse and chose them. Chose the chaos and the love and the ordinary, extraordinary life they'd built together. Chose to be enough exactly as she was. Chose to believe that broken things could be fixed and broken people could find wholeness in unexpected places. She'd arrived broken and afraid, convinced she had nothing to offer except labor and distance. She'd left as someone who understood that love wasn't about perfection or biology or original claims. It was about showing up, about staying even when staying was scary, about choosing and being chosen in return. The fourth chair at the table was never empty again. And if you asked Mara Keene Harper, mother, wife, partner, the woman who wasn't fit for any man but turned out to be perfect for this family, she'd tell you she'd never been happier, never been more whole, never been more exactly where she was supposed to be. Because sometimes the best families aren't the ones you're born into. Sometimes they're the ones you choose. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they choose you back.